Chapter 41. In Huiying's horrified eyes, a certain red and white figure holding a soft sword confidently walked toward the ox-headed beast in front of her. It's the Moongazer series again. It's so big. Are you the father of the Moongazer fox? Father your sister. How could the ox-headed beast give birth to a fox? How weird must its mother be? You idiot, just by looking at the two words Moongazer, you think that it and the Moongazer fox are relatives and belong to the same Moongazer clan. What exactly did you see in that book of 9 regions monsters that you borrowed from Wen? Although they were both born in the Full Moon Valley, the difference between the Moongazer roar and the Moongazer fox is as big as the difference between you and a normal human. That's a world of difference. Huiying didn't know how many times she roared in her heart. Now she really understood senior brother Yu Yun's headache when facing this successor disciple. It was simply a splitting headache. Sure enough, the people of the non-phase peak were naturally the mortal enemies of the Misty Peak. Her master was not wrong at all. But in any case, she could not let him face the Moongazer roar alone. That was simply courting death. Huiying moved her cloud thread, trying to entangle one of the legs of the Moongazer roar like how she did with the ghost monkey. However, the giant beast felt that a foreign object had touched its body, so it just shook its body, and the cloud thread could not entangle it. Huiying secretly sighed. The level difference between the two sides was really too big. Moreover, the wind spell that she was good at was completely restrained by the opponent, so she could only use the 5-element sword, relying on the power of the 5 elements on the magical tool to fight the opponent. However, at the same time, Wang Lu did not give Huiying any time to use her sword. With 2 steps forward, he was already less than 5 steps away from the Moongazer roar. The purple myrtle soft sword drew an arc from bottom to top, which was the starting move of the soft cloud sword technique. The Moongazer roar lowered its head and looked at the approaching red and white figure. Its beast instinct told it that the little guy in front of it was not a threat at all, so it did not pay too much attention and just waved its front paw, ready to push him away. However, Wang Lu was waiting for the opponent to move first. Almost at the same time as the Moongazer roar, Wang Lu easily bypassed the claw attack and rushed to the opponent's chest. The chest and abdomen were vital points. This time, the full moon roar could no longer remain calm. Its huge body fiercely rushed forward, trying to knock away the opponent. However, Wang Lu, like a swimming fish, once again dodged. Incredibly, he adjusted his center of gravity and directly circled to the side of the body. The purple myrtle soft sword directly threatened the vital point on the side of the abdomen. Although the full moon roar was not known for its agility, it had never been in such a difficult situation before. With its vital parts continuously being approached, this giant beast felt a strong threat. Suddenly, its pupils turned red, and it was about to show its true strength. The Moongazer roar felt. The Moongazer ROP, and it. Behind him, Huiying helplessly shouted. She had yet to complete the sacrificial refining of her 5-element sword, and at the same time, she also had to protect her other junior brothers and sisters, so she really couldn't take care of Wang Lu. Junior sister, don't panic. This stupid thing can't do anything to me. In the next moment, the huge bull's head raised up high, and an indescribable roar rolled out. Huiying's expression changed. She immediately threw away the 5 elements golden sword in her hand and took out the 5 elements wooden sword. She shook out a green light to protect herself and the people behind her. Even so, the junior brothers and junior sisters were still shaken by the rolling sound waves. Each of their faces turned pale and they couldn't stop swaying. Huiying's wood element sword light was also on the verge of collapse. Roar! Roar! The giant beast's roar was endless, becoming longer and longer. The reason why the full moon roar was able to become the overlord of the Full Moon Valley was because of this powerful roar. This kind of roar that could shake one's chi and blood, and even frighten the 3 souls and 6 spirits, directly acted on the human body, and could not be blocked by any spell. Once it was pushed to the extreme, it could even destroy gold and crack stone. Only the mammoth-like giant beast in the Icewind Valley could resist it. Although the young cultivator's magical power was not bad, and their physique had also been tempered in the body refining stage, they still couldn't compete with the monster beast. They were suddenly shaken and their chi and blood surged. The full moon roar's unique skill was not a demonic technique, but an innate ability. Therefore, Huiying couldn't use all kinds of means to restrain the demonic technique. She could only rely on the wood element sword to barely arrange a wind array to offset some of the power. However, the effect was limited. Fortunately, the junior brothers and junior sisters were quite good. Yu Xinyao used the mind-calming technique, Zhu Qin used the living blood technique for everyone, and even Wen Bao surprisingly released the solid rock technique. Although there was something wrong, it was better than nothing. Several people struggled to support and gradually retreated, but the situation was still not optimistic. As for Wang Lu, who was facing the roar directly, Huiying hardly dared to think about it. At such a close distance, without any cover, a mere second stage body refining stage, it wouldn't be strange if he was smashed to pieces. She hated herself for not being able to protect everyone. As one of the team leaders, endless feelings of remorse surged out, accompanied by waves of roar, which made Huiying unable to raise her head, and her knees gradually fell to the ground. However, at this time, F***ck, there's still half a year until the spring festival. Why the F***ck are you screaming? Bang! The next moment, the roar abruptly stopped. Huiying raised her head, only to see the full moon roar covering its nose and howling to the sky. A fountain of blood surged out from its nose. Wang Lu retracted his golden right foot and raised the purple myrtle flexible sword in his hand with an unhappy look. This stupid thing, its fighting skill is not good, but its moaning skill is at the expert level. Although the full moon roar couldn't understand human language, it knew what the other party was doing. It opened its mouth, and a stronger roar was brewing in its throat. Roar, 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 roar. F***ck, it's not over yet. When the full moon roar roared, its body was out of control, so Wang Lu followed up with a kick on its nose. It was accurate and ruthless, and the full moon roar's passion suddenly turned into a whimper. At this time, the full moon roar really wanted to kneel. This guy was actually immune to its roar. This was completely unscientific. In the past, in this full moon valley, there had never been anyone who dared to face its roar directly, whether it was the ghost monkeys that gathered in the wind, or the cultivators that occasionally came here to gain experience. Unless it was a powerful cultivator that could see the rich spiritual energy in the surroundings, otherwise, once it roared, it would always be successful. Not to mention the full moon roar, even Huiying, who was watching from behind, felt that her jaw seemed to be dislocated. At that kind of distance, facing the full moon roar head-on, even senior brother Yu Yun, who had strengthened his body with metal and stone spiritual energy, would be seriously injured, but Wang Lu was actually completely unharmed. He was clearly only at the second stage body refining stage. How could his body be so strong? Was this the difference between an inner disciple and a successor disciple? I, your master, also want to be a successor disciple. Under Huiying's incredulous gaze, Wang Lu once again used the soft cloud sword art and fought with the full moon roar. The bull-headed giant beast bared its fangs and brandished its claws, but it was completely unable to do anything to the combination of winding step and soft cloud sword art. Wang Lu circled around it until it was dizzy. Occasionally, it would be hit by its claws, but Wang Lu would be able to divert most of the force, taking it head-on without the slightest injury. And every time it wanted to raise its head and roar, Wang Lu would often seize the opportunity to kick it. After struggling for a few rounds, the full moon roar finally gave in. Using its claws to scratch its nose, it turned around and ran. Who would have thought that Wang Lu would not let it go? Oh. You want to run after offending Wang Lu? Not a chance. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the full moon roar's hind leg. Although he did not use much strength, his timing was ingenious, causing the giant beast to lose its balance and fall down with a plop. Wang Lu immediately jumped forward, and the purple myrtle flexible sword was directly placed in front of the full moon roar's lower body. The giant beast suddenly became motionless, as if it was a statue. Tisk, tsk, run, continue to run. You can relax if you run away. Wang Lu smiled, reached out his hand and patted the full moon roar's muscular back, and then took back the purple myrtle flexible sword. However, the full moon roar really did not dare to act rashly anymore. It obediently lay on the ground, turned around, and looked at Wang Lu with its pair of ox eyes, waiting for its punishment. At this time, not far away, the cage that Yu Yun had erected with his metal and wood dual swords was finally overwhelmed and collapsed. The two stone-wood apes roared and tore open the cage, breaking out of the ground. Yu Yun, who was in the middle of the cage, was already kneeling on the ground, his robe stained with blood. Hua Ying was shocked. "Senior brother, how are you?" Yu Yun reluctantly opened his eyes. He was shocked and angry at the same time. "Why haven't you left yet?" Just as he finished speaking, he saw the figure of a certain minotaur, and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Wang Lu raised his hand and slapped the full moon roar. "Damn, you stupid thing, why are you so ugly? You scared my junior brother until he vomited blood." The full moon roar obediently lay on the ground, and then carefully looked at Wang Lu with its ox eyes. His slap didn't hurt much anyway. As long as he didn't aim the flexible sword at its lower body, it would be fine. Wang Lu stretched out his hand and pointed to the front. "Go and *ck those two stupid apes over there." Although the full moon roar didn't understand human language, it could guess Wang Lu's intention. At this time, it was depressed, so it wanted to kill those two stupid apes to vent its anger. It immediately pounded its arms on the ground and roared, ready to attack. "Damn, you don't learn your lesson, do you? What are you shouting for?" The moongazer serpent covered its nose and quietly rushed over, fighting with the stone-wood ape. Although it didn't dare to use its strongest killing move, relying on the full moon roar's sturdy body, it was enough to rival the stone-wood apes. Seeing the full moon roar, the giant apes were also secretly afraid. They couldn't use their fists and feet, and even though it was 2 against 1, they still couldn't gain the upper hand. At this time, Hua Ying and the others naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. A burst of spells and flying swords, combined with the full moon roar, beat the two apes black and blue, making them beg for mercy. Before long, a full moon roar and the two stone-wood apes were kneeling side by side on the ground, waiting to be dealt with. Hua Ying, who was holding the injured Yu Yun, felt as if she was in a dream. At this time, the red and white silhouette seemed incomparably tall. A successor disciple was indeed worthy of being called a successor disciple. Although it was difficult for him to win against the full moon fox, facing the full moon roar, he could create a miracle. It was just that she couldn't understand why that invincible sound attack was ineffective against him. Could it be that the always poor fifth martial uncle left him some treasure? Cough. No, because his basic skills are more solid than any of us. While coughing blood, Yu Yun explained to Hua Ying and the others, the full moon roar's sound attack directly affects the human body, so it is difficult to be reduced by spells. And us chi cultivating cultivators, before reaching the foundation building stage, our physique is limited compared to a Xiantian martial master, so we can't withstand it. But if it's a martial grandmaster who has trained to the point of blood, chi, and bone marrow, they can easily resist the full moon roar. So, this is the kind of monster that cultivators find hard to fight, but martial grandmaster is easy to fight. Senior brother Wang Lu's strength is not unfathomable, it's just that his physique is so strong that it has far surpassed us. Alas, no wonder master said that we don't need to trouble ourselves to take care of him. It turns out that he already knew that a successor disciple doesn't need other people to take care of him. The several young black and blue and white disciples didn't seem to understand, but they still felt that it was amazing. But after a moment, Hua Ying raised a question, but his speed and strength are really only at the second grade of body refining stage. Could it be that he has been hiding his strength? No, I think this is probably related to his cultivation method. Legend has it that fifth martial uncle is good at defense, so, even if his other attributes are only at the second grade of body refining stage, his defensive ability and vitality are far beyond them. Speaking up to here, Yuyun bitterly smiled, although it sounds a bit sour, but if the opponent wasn't a full moon roar or a stone-wood ape that likes to fight head-on, but a ghost monkey or something like that, I'm afraid that senior brother Wang Lu wouldn't be able to deal with it. His strength is not that different from others, it's just that he has met the most suitable opponent. Everyone doesn't need to be discouraged, his performance has already exceeded my expectations. Thus, the several blue and black and white disciples suddenly regained some confidence. It's not that we are too incompetent, it's that a certain red and white disciple is too abnormal. But now, the experiential learning can no longer continue. I'm very sorry that I have dragged everyone down, cough. Yuyun said while spitting out a mouthful of blood. Although his junior sister had already fed him the pill, it was impossible for it to have an immediate effect. And without the key leader, the group could only withdraw from the experiential learning. Several of his junior brothers and sisters quickly comforted him. Senior brother, what are you talking about? If it weren't for you desperately stopping the two giant apes, we would have already been finished. We should thank senior brother Wang Lu. If it weren't for him stopping the full moon roar, none of us would have been able to escape. Wang Lu waved his hand. No need to thank him, but the problem now is, junior brother Yuyun, you are so seriously injured, how are we going to go back? Yuyun hesitated for a moment. It's reasonable to say that in the event of a serious accident, we can ask the sect for help, but, however, first, it was impossible for the sect's experts to arrive so quickly, so there was no way to help. Second, once the reinforcement talisman was sent out, everyone's points in this experiential learning would be greatly reduced, even the leader's points would be deducted. Of course, now was not the time to care about points. Yuyun took out the reinforcement talisman and was about to activate it with his magical power. Wait a moment. Wang Lu stretched out his hand to stop him. Junior brother Yuyun, this talisman, can it be used to ask for help? Yuyun nodded. It is currently assigned to Honorable Master. What's wrong? Oh, I think there is no need to alarm second martial uncle about this kind of thing. The sect's elders are busy with their own affairs. It would be better to find an idle person. Idle person? For example, my idiot master. Yuyun was shocked. Fifth martial uncle. How can that be? Wang Lu smiled bitterly. It's not that unreliable. She is, after all, the king pill. Moreover, recently she has been idle and bored, so it's just right to let her do some serious work and contribute to the sect. Yuyun and Huiying looked at each other, unable to make up their minds. This kind of thing was not clearly stipulated by the sect, and what Wang Lu said was reasonable, but their intuition told them that something was wrong. In the end, Yuyun clenched his teeth and said, this time, thanks to senior brother Wang Lu, my life was saved. Since senior brother has opened his mouth, what else do I have to say? Thereupon, he reached out his hand and changed a few words on the talisman, then infused it with his magical power. Suddenly, a golden light soared into the sky and flew far away. Chapter 42. After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, a white-robed woman flew over from afar on a flying sword, holding a talisman for help. As she approached the clear sky peak, a faintly discernible barrier of light flickered. However, the woman shook the golden talisman in her hand and the barrier of light disappeared. A moment later, the flying sword landed on the ground, and the black, white, blue, and white disciples bowed in unison. Greetings, fifth martial uncle. You're welcome. The white-clothed woman looked at the crowd and then at the three spiritual monsters kneeling in a row. She could not help but smile and say, the situation is not bad. Despite encountering such a lineup, there were actually not too many casualties. Yuyun said, it's all thanks to senior brother Wang Lu's divine might. You are. Yuyun who entered the sect 4 years ago. The woman seriously sized up this young inner court disciple and then looked at the wreckage of the metal cage not too far away. She said, second senior apprentice brother said that you were a cultivator who was willing to sacrifice yourself and endure hardship. He was right. You sacrificed yourself to cover the retreat of your junior apprentice brothers and sisters. As a guide for this experience, your courage is commendable. Yu Yun was pleasantly surprised. It was rumored that this fifth martial uncle had always been at odds with the Misty Peak. Although they rarely had any contact, Yu Yun had always thought that this fifth martial uncle was a very difficult elder to talk to. Unexpectedly, this fifth martial uncle had praised him so much. But the woman changed the topic and said, "It's good to be willing to sacrifice, but it's better to avoid unnecessary sacrifices. You should know that with your own strength, you were able to face 2 stone-wood apes head-on. If you were seriously injured, then why didn't you join forces with Huaying?" Yu Yin explained, "At that time, I didn't take into account senior brother Wang Lu's ability, and my junior brothers and sisters needed someone to take care of them, so I arranged for junior sister Huaying to. Someone must take care of it? How stupid. You veterans are supposed to lead the way, not babysitters for these kids." Lingjian School's experiential learning was not a game without danger. It was not a real test of life and death. In the future, when they walked out of the mountain gate, they would only die faster. Do you think encountering 2 stone-wood apes and a full moon roar is a difficult situation? When your master and I were sent out by the Spirit Sword sect as management trainees for the experiential learning, out of more than 100 fellow disciples, only a dozen of us were left. That was the real experiential learning. You guys are far from it. Listening to these words, Yu Yun was drenched in cold sweat. Not to mention that he had indeed done a lot of work that was beyond the guidelines of the guide's manual. Just the fact that his master had always been vague and kept his mouth shut about the management trainee program was enough to make his blood run cold. "All right, you've performed well in this training, so I won't say anything more. The others are the same. Although in my opinion, you are still unbelievably inexperienced, the path of immortal cultivation is always one that is walked step by step. Let's call it a day. Although it looks like there's still more than half of the way to go, your experiences should be enough for you to digest for a while." After the woman finished speaking, she stretched out her hand and produced a few emerald green bamboo swords. "Each of you hold on to one. I've already set the destination for you. It's 4 Divisions Peak." The 4 Divisions Peak was the relay of the 12 peaks of the Spirit Sword sect, and it was accessible in all directions, so this arrangement was appropriate. Yu Yun and the others nodded, held on to their bamboo swords, and were about to leave. However, when they were about to leave, they saw that the 5th elder didn't seem to want to leave, and Wang Lu also quietly stood beside her. Yu Yun was curious, so he asked, "5th martial aunt, are you not leaving?" The woman froze for a moment, and then coughed. "It's like this. There are so many monsters appearing in the Full Moon Valley at the same time, and they are deliberately targeting you, the experiential learning cultivators. I'm afraid there's something fishy about this. If there's a problem with the restriction spell of the Clear Sky Peak, then it would be a disaster. Therefore, I want to check the nearby restriction spell with Wang Lu. Just treat it as a live lesson." Yu Yun and the others suddenly sighed with emotion. A successor disciple was indeed a successor disciple. Even if the master was so unreliable, she still had many more opportunities to learn compared to the other disciples. No wonder she was able to fight against the full moon roar while only at the 2nd level of body refining stage. It was really enviable. Moreover, the 5th elder didn't seem to be as bad as the rumors said. Not only did she take care of the younger disciples, but she also considered the safety of the restriction spell. She was really a model of meticulous and responsible person. With reverent eyes, Yu Yun and the others left the Clear Sky Peak in a green light. When their figures disappeared into the sea of clouds, the woman in white burst into laughter. They really believed it. The nearby Wang Lu shrugged his shoulders. What's there to be proud of bullying a few kids? Isn't there a rule in the sect now? Being cheated by you is not considered cheating. Otherwise, would be embarrassed to cheat Yu Yun, that kind person. But first, we should think about how to deal with the sect leader and the others. The woman confidently patted her plump chest. Of course, I will deny it. If you want money, you don't have it. If you want your life, you won't give it. Let's see what else you can do. Master, I want to ask you a question about a successor disciple. Say it. If the master of a successor disciple is disqualified as an elder, does that disciple retain his successor disciple status? F***ck, don't be so lacking in confidence in me. How could such a small matter shake my position as an elder? Probably not. As the fifth elder spoke, he felt a little guilty. So let's hurry up. With that, the fifth elder took out her emerald green bamboo sword and reached out to pull Wang Lu up. Herbology specialized student, cheer up, this is a rare opportunity, we can't waste even a second. You also know that this is a rare opportunity. If I don't help you, you won't be able to enter the clear sky peak for 100 years. So how are you going to thank me? His master was very generous. 50-50. Deal, but first, we need to find the vermilion fruit. Good, I also need that thing, let's pick it all at once. With a long laugh, the emerald green bamboo sword flew across the full moon valley and instantly entered the Azure Dragon Gorge. The Azure Dragon Gorge was also the most abundant place in the small clear sky peak. Third and fourth rank spirit grasses could be found everywhere. Of course, correspondingly, the number of monsters in this place was also the largest. Among them, there was no lack of third-rank monsters, which was far from what ordinary chi cultivating stage cultivators could contend against. However, when a true cultivator reached the foundation establishment stage, according to the school's rules, they could not enter the small clear sky peak at will. Therefore, some of the special herbs in the Azure Dragon Gorge were particularly precious, which could be regarded as the generous welfare of the Lingjian school for those young cultivators who dared to challenge their limits. But now, the generous welfare of the Lingjian school was being plundered at an alarming rate. Under the careful guidance of a guide, a barbaric porcupine intruder quickly and effectively picked all kinds of rare spirit grasses in the Azure Dragon Gorge. 11 o'clock, the platform 500 meters away, according to the records, is the growing point of the Lingji in the Azure Dragon Gorge. There is a high probability of collecting the 1,000-year-old Lingji. On top of the emerald green bamboo sword, Wang Lu was holding a scroll of records of the clear sky. Combined with his own herbalism knowledge, he pointed out the growing place of the spirit grasses to his master. Master was the first to react. The flying sword changed direction and flew straight towards the high platform where the Ganoderma was growing. As the green light approached, a few screams of horror came from the high platform. A few sturdy black shadows fled from the high platform in a sorry state, running all the way to the distance. These were the level 3 monsters that were supposed to guard this Ganoderma. In front of a chi cultivating stage cultivator, it was an almost unsolvable problem. In the many years of the spirit sword sect's existence, only a few lucky people were able to deceive their guards and pick this Ganoderma from the Azure Dragon Gorge. But now, the fifth elder, who was riding her flying sword, only leaked a little bit of her Dan Chi, and these monsters were already frightened out of their wits and fled in panic. Very good, a water Lingji and a wood Lingji, both of them are more than 1,000 years old. This is indeed the Azure Dragon Gorge. The woman in white gathered 2 clouds of strong Reiki in her hands, and the herbs on the high platform were wrapped in it to prevent the medicinal power from leaking. On the side, Wang Lu nodded. This should be a node of the Qingyun Peak, which is especially suitable for nourishing herbs like Lingji. It's a pity that I didn't see the legendary 1,000-year-old flesh Lingji. It doesn't matter. If the quality is not enough, we can make up for it with quantity. There are no 1,000-year-old ones, but there are a lot of 500 or 600-year-old ones. F***ck, you even want to pick 500-year-old Lolita grass? Are you trying to kill them all? Anyway, they can't come here once in 100 years. If I don't do it now, will I leave it to others? Seeing the woman in white stretched out her delicate hand and swept away all the Lingji mushrooms that had been accumulated for hundreds and thousands of years, Wang Lu couldn't help but sigh with emotion that his master really had the moral integrity of a poor person. As expected, she used the three lights policy, completely disregarding the importance of sustainable development. At the same time, he had to think about how to pull himself out of this pool of mud after the incident. Sigh, it was actually very simple. He could just say that he was forced. In any case, his master's lower limit was always unfathomable. No matter how he framed her, it wouldn't be too much. And the fifth elder, who didn't know that he had already been sold by his disciple, was completely immersed in the happiness of getting rich overnight. Very good, I have the scarlet fruit, the golden thread grass, and the 1,000-year-old Lingji. My 1,000-spirit pill will be settled. When the time comes, I will open 2 cauldrons, eat 1 cauldron, and sell 1 cauldron. I will also have money for the wine. Good, let's continue to work hard and try to pick that red refined fruit as well. Seeing that his master was still going to advance triumphantly, Wang Lu hurriedly pulled her back. *CK, don't indulge yourself too much. It's about time to leave. If the sect leader and the disciplinary elder really block your way, you will have to take out everything you have in your pocket. After hearing what Wang Lu said, his master suddenly realized. That makes sense. Okay, let's stop here for today. Let's hurry up and leave, don't get caught. Before he finished speaking, he activated his emerald green bamboo sword with all his might. The sword flew out of Blue Cloud Peak like lightning. And after a few breaths of time, a golden sword light descended from the sky, falling right on top of the Ganoderma platform. The sword light dissipated, revealing an old man brimming with anger. He was the second elder Lu Xian, who had rushed over after receiving a disciple's report. The old man lowered his head to look at the mess on the platform. Then he looked around. A few of the most valuable herb-growing grounds near the Azure Dragon Gorge had already been ruined. The loss was extremely heavy. Although he wasn't in charge of the affairs of Blue Cloud Peak, this time, it was the Misty Peak disciple who released the talisman, which was why that despicable person took the opportunity to sneak attack them. In the future, if the Blue Cloud Peak master who went out to travel came back, how was he going to explain it to him? Wang Wu. Wang Wu. Wang Wu. Lu Xian couldn't hold back the anger in his heart. He looked up to the sky and roared, causing his nascent soul to shake violently. Chapter 43. The news that the small Clear Sky Peak was robbed by the thugs soon spread within a small range of the sect. This time, the consequences could not be said to be light. The furious Lu Xian grabbed the sleeve of the disciplinary elder and directly went to the top of the stellar peak to demand an explanation from the sect leader. After listening to the cause of the matter, the sect leader could only bitterly smile again and again. Seeing the anger of his 2 junior brothers, he could only helplessly announce that the 5th elder would be punished. However, a dramatic twist appeared. When the disciplinary elder arrived at the non-phase peak, the robber actually absconded. This kind of thing could be said to have never happened in Lingjian school for 100 years. A certain heavenly sword hall elder absconded because of a spirit herb worth 100,000 spirit stones. If this was told to an outsider, perhaps no one would believe it. And what she left behind, in addition to the innocent face of Wang Lu, was only a letter of repentance full of sincere feelings. Senior brothers, junior sisters, I was wrong, I was really wrong. After a night of repentance, I have deeply realized my sins. In the future, I will travel the 9 regions, doing good deeds and atoning for my greed. Before I wash away my sins, please do not look for me. Wang Wu. Seeing this red letter of blood, Lu Xian and Fang He couldn't even get angry. This naughty guy, for more than 100 years, she never changed. She was always so **********. Up. However, things had already reached this point, what else could they do? Should the elders of Heavenly Sword Hall come out to chase her down? It was not a big crime. Especially when the sect leader contacted the Clear Sky Peak Master in the distant eastern border region, the person involved smiled and said, "It's okay, we're all martial sister and junior brother of the same sect. If you want any medicinal herbs, just tell me." You don't have to make a big fuss and blame 5th senior sister too much. The Clear Sky Peak Master was a very kind cultivator. This answer could be considered as giving everyone a way out of this embarrassing situation, so the matter was reluctantly settled. As for Wang Lu, the elders did not make things difficult for him. First, in the previous experiential learning, he turned the tide and saved the entire team, so his contribution was indispensable. Secondly, I should have expected this day to come when I threw him to the 5th elder for training 2 years ago. Lingjian School deserved it. I shouldn't make things difficult for kids. After the storm subsided, everything in Lingjian School went back to normal. It was just that the daily program on Non-Phase Peak, the quarrel between the master and the disciple had to come to an end because of the absence of the lead actor. After leaving the letter of repentance, the 5th elder really left the Lingjian School. She claimed that she was leaving to do good deeds. Wang Lu certainly knew that she was looking for a place to refine and sell medicine. Of course, before he left, his master did not forget to refine the shapeless bone-strengthening pills for him. There were more than 20 pills in a box, enough for Wang Lu to use for a course of treatment. The next stage of the non-phase sword bone cultivation method was also earnestly copied down by her, leaving it for Wang Lu to learn by himself. With the medicine and the secret manuals, it didn't matter whether her lazy master was around or not. Wang Lu calmed down and resumed the rhythm of his life. His days were comfortable. However, in less than 2 days, someone took the initiative to come to his door. That day, there was no class in Ting Cloud Hall. Wang Lu planned to sleep peacefully until noon, saving himself breakfast. But in the morning, he heard someone calling his door. When he opened the door, he saw Zhu Qin's face. Wang Lu actually didn't hate this B*TCH who had been arguing with him for the past 2 years. However, at this moment, when he saw her, he had the urge to hammer her. Are you here to be abused? Outside the door, Zhu Qin put on an unusually forced smile, but after listening to Wang Lu's words, he suddenly became annoyed. As a result, before he could finish his sentence, a pair of powerful palms patted his shoulder, making him unable to speak. Senior brother Wang Lu, please forgive me for disturbing you. Turning his head, he saw Yu Yun, who was wearing a black and white robe, standing beside Zhu Qin with a gentle smile. At the same time, Huaying, Yu Xinyao, Wen Yin, and Wen Bao were also there. They were all his fellow disciples who went to the small Clear Sky Peak for experiential learning a few days ago. Seeing this scene, Wang Lu understood and sighed. You guys didn't sleep in this early morning and came all the way here just to wish me a happy new year? Yu Yun smiled. We came to thank you. A few days ago, I was recuperating in the Misty Peak, so it was inconvenient for me to walk. Today, my injury has healed, so I immediately called everyone here. I hope senior brother Wang Lu won't blame us for coming late. How early do you want to come? Do you want to call for chickens in the middle of the night? Wang Lu snappily said, All right, thank you. If you have any gifts, just put them on the ground. If there's nothing else, please go back. As a result, Huaying suddenly became unhappy. What? Why are you being so overbearing? We sincerely came to thank you. The other true disciples are not as arrogant as you. Wang Lu said, This is really not arrogance, this is called getting up from the bed. If you don't understand, wait until I come to your room tonight, then you'll understand. Yu Yun was sensible. Junior sister misunderstood, we came too early and disturbed senior brother's rest. We are really sorry. Yu Yun's etiquette was so thoughtful that Wang Lu had nowhere to vent his anger. He thought that after this group of people left, he would definitely go to the non-phase peak to kill that black bear. Then came the conventional greetings. Huaying, Zhu Qin, and the others thanked Wang Lu one after another and left their gifts. Most of them were elixirs, magical tools, and the like. Huaying, on the other hand, gave a set of flowing cloud silk, a grand 7th rank magical tool, which could be regarded as the best early stage of the qi refining stage. As for Zhu Qin, he simply gave 100 spirit stones. Although he said it was not a small amount, the meaning was extremely suspicious, as if he was mocking the other party as a poor ghost. Wang Lu accepted all of them, and then when the greetings were over, he closed the door and sent off Yu Yun and the others one by one. However, at this time, senior brother Wang Lu, I have something I want to talk to you about alone. Wang Lu was taken aback, because the one who applied to stay was actually the most inconspicuous fatty Wen Bao. Speaking of this fatty, there were a lot of interesting things that happened in the past 2 years. 2 years ago, in the Immortal Gathering, many people were not optimistic about this fatty. Although his spirit root was second rank, his character was cowardly and his mind was ordinary. They really couldn't see a good future for him. But 2 years later, Wen Bao's cultivation seemed to confirm people's pessimistic expectations. A dignified second-rank spirit root, his cultivation progress was actually slightly worse than Zhu Qin's, let alone compared to the outer court disciple Yu Xinyao, who also had an earth-rank spirit root. If one wanted to talk about his merits, it would be that he was simple, honest, and kind to others. However, immortal cultivation was not the cultivation of virtue. If one only relied on being kind, one would not be able to survive in the immortal cultivation world. However, in the eyes of Wang Lu, Wen Bao actually had a lot of merits. He was not as unbearable as others thought. For example, he was fat. 2 years later, he had actually become fatter than before. He was almost like a ball. He didn't know where his 1 year of hard cultivation in the body refining stage had gone. Being sized up by Wang Lu's interested gaze, Wen Bao's sweat began to drip down. 2 years ago, he was afraid of Wang Lu. 2 years later, even though they were fellow disciples, he still couldn't be like Zhu Qin, daring to have a quarrel with Wang Lu. That was Wang Lu. And the experiential learning 3 days ago in the small clear sky peak deepened the fear in Wen Bao's heart. At this time, standing in front of Wang Lu to speak, he didn't know how much courage he had overdrawn. Fortunately, although Wang Lu was impatient with others, he still had the interest to tease the fatty. What is it? Just say it. Wen Bao's whole body trembled, and he quickly said, I want to, senior brother, you, cultivate. Wang Lu was silent for a long time, his face gradually shrouded in a layer of hostility. You want to dual cultivate with me? You have a lot of imagination, dead fatty. Being swept by Wang Lu's cold eyes, Wen Bao almost fell to the ground. No, I mean, I want to ask senior brother Wang Lu to guide me in cultivation. Oh, worship a master. Wang Lu restrained his hostility. Why do you want to worship a master? Is martial uncle Lu Xian not teaching you well? While speaking, Wang Lu moved a stool and threw it to Wen Bao. Wen Bao's mind calmed down. He quickly sat down and explained, it's not that master's teaching is not good, but master rarely personally teaches us cultivation methods. It's always taught by several senior brothers. Unfortunately, I'm too stupid and always miss the point. And then? Even those senior brothers in Misty Peak can't teach you. I'm only at the 2nd grade of body refining, and my realm is not even as high as yours. What use is that? It's not the same. Wen Bao shook his head. Senior brother, although your realm is not high, you were able to defeat the full moon roar at the 2nd grade of body refining. This is definitely real. Good, you have good eyes, but it's meaningless. You can't learn my martial arts, we're not in the same system. Wen Bao said, I know that my talent is not enough, and I definitely can't learn senior brother's martial arts. But just like in the Peach Blossom Village, senior brother can always find the right path. If you're willing to help me, I can definitely. I can no longer be a burden to others. Speaking up to here, Wen Bao was a bit sad. It was obvious that his slow progress over the past 2 years had put a lot of pressure on him. But when Wang Lu heard this, he was quite surprised. This fatty is not stupid. Since he can't walk the right path, he actually knows how to take a detour, and he really did walk the right path. 3 days ago, when he was practicing in the small clear sky peak, Wang Lu had seen the fatty display his martial arts. He wielded a heavy black iron sword that looked like a fire stick like a thin willow branch. Although it was completely disorderly, it was powerful and indestructible. However, the damn fatty ran slower than a pig, so it was very difficult for him to hit anyone. Moreover, when he waved his sword, it was as if he was running naked. It felt like even a kitchen knife could hack him to death. This kind of strange martial arts and performance could easily make people doubt the sincerity of Misty Peak's training of disciples. However, in Wang Lu's view, the person who designed this path was truly a genius. The damn fatty had the earth spirit root, and was born with great strength. Generally speaking, he was most suitable to practice those cultivation techniques that focused on defense, becoming a glorious tank. However, once Wen Bao's timid temperament was taken into consideration, it was very difficult to trust him with one's back. But was this damn fatty really incorrigible? Not necessarily. 2 years had passed, and probably not many people still remembered his outstanding performance in the cloud wave map. After Wang Lu and Hai Yun Fan, the damn fatty was the first challenger to walk out of the fog. It could be seen that behind that indecisive fat face, there was a powerful explosive force. If this strength could be fully excavated, then this set of black iron sword technique would simply be a perfect match. Unfortunately, after 2 years, the Misty Peak's excavation of Wen Bao's potential was really limited. Even if he had gone through the rigorous training of the inner court, the damn fatty was still a damn fatty. Not only did he not transform into a brave warrior, but he was also like a useless domestic pig. At this point, even the Misty Peak senior brothers who were teaching on behalf of their master began to wonder if their master had made a mistake and chose the wrong waist to enter the sect. However, Wang Lu was very clear that it was only the Misty Peak's teaching method so far that was wrong. If he was handed over to him, this fatty would have already become a decent person. Now that he came to him for help, although half of it was just a fluke, it was really a wonderful move. Not only did Wang Lu have a way, but he was also willing to help. On the one hand, although he didn't have much contact with Wen Bao in the past 2 years, the fatty was a kind person. Usually, his etiquette was very thoughtful, so the relationship between the two could be considered harmonious. On the other hand, the current Wang Lu also needed a fatty to help him practice. In the next stage of non-phase sword bone cultivation, not only he needed the assistance of non-phase bone improving pill, he also needed to hit his whole body with a heavy object. According to the notes left by his master, the strength of the hit must be enough to instantly kill an ordinary person. Moreover, it must be continuously bombarded all over the body. So, it seemed like the fatty's mad dog black iron sword technique was simply tailor-made. Therefore, this time, Wang Lu very generously nodded his head. "You want me to teach you martial arts?" "Sure." Wen Bao simply couldn't believe that things were done just like that. His small eyes were perfectly round, and then he fiercely pinched his thigh. The pain made the fat all over his body tremble. Wang Lu smiled and said, "Of course, I have a condition." The fatty nodded again and again. I understand. As long as senior brother is willing to teach me, I can do anything." Just as he finished speaking, a trace of fear appeared on his face, as if he was afraid that Wang Lu would roast him. Wang Lu smiled again. "Rest assured, my condition is not that tricky. There is only one thing: from now on, you have to treat me like a master." "Ah. You don't need to kowtow 3 times and bow 9 times, but when the master speaks, the disciple must listen. It's that simple. Can you do it?" Wen Bao was overjoyed. No problem. Since senior brother is willing to teach me, aren't you my master? Naturally, I have to treat you with the courtesy of a master. No matter what you say, I will listen." Wang Lu smiled. Very good, he got a new pet, Wen Bao. Chapter 44. Wang Lu had always been efficient. That afternoon, he arranged to meet Wen Bao at the Misty Peak's training field. There were a total of 3 martial arts arenas in the Misty Peak, the smallest of which was located near the soaring cloud hall. It was a place for disciples who had just entered the sect to cultivate. On one side of the flat open space, there was a row of red wooden dummies enchanted with spells. Cultivators could test the various spells they had learned on the wooden dummies. When Wang Lu arrived, Wen Bao had already arrived a long time ago. He was practicing the dark iron sword technique on the empty field. His fat was shaking and he was sweating profusely. It could be seen that he was serious. However, the fire stick was still not organized. His sword momentum also lacked the courage and decisiveness that the dark iron sword should have. Wang Lu watched for a while and shook his head. Stop. It's just a waste of time if you continue to practice like this. Wen Bao's face was bitter. But I'm not talented. If I don't practice hard, the path is wrong. The more knowledge you have, the more reactionary you will be. You're on the wrong side now. The more you do, the more mistakes you'll make. Ah. Wen Bao was surprised. But I did practice according to the method that senior brother taught me. I never changed it without permission. That means your senior brother taught you wrong. If he taught you right, why did you come to me? Wen Bao was stunned for a moment. What senior brother said makes sense. Then how should I practice? Wang Lu took 2 steps forward and pointed the purple myrtle soft sword at Wen Bao. Come and fight with me first. Wen Bao hesitated for a moment. He lifted the heavy sword that looked like a fire stick. He roared and slashed at Wang Lu's head. Wang Lu did not dodge. He used the soft cloud sword technique to take the blow. The fat man's strength was immediately reduced by 70%. Although the remaining 30% made Wang Lu take 3 steps back, it could not disrupt the sword momentum of the soft cloud sword technique. It could not cause any real damage to Wang Lu. Wen Bao was not discouraged. He followed up with a stab at Wen Bao's chest. Wang Lu moved sideways to block it. This time, he did not take half a step back. He used the purple myrtle sword to divert all the force. Instead, it made the fat man lose his balance and stagger a few steps. Fatty wanted to turn around and fight again, but Wang Lu was no longer interested. Enough, do you know why you lost? Wen Bao praised from the bottom of his heart, Shixiang's swordsmanship is brilliant, I am far inferior to you. Brilliant my ass, it's nothing more than a mortal world's martial arts. But your black iron sword technique is able to control the spiritual energy of the earth element. It's indestructible and as stable as Mount Tai. It's a genuine immortal Dao sword technique. In terms of brilliance, it's better than my soft cloud sword. Senior brother's cultivation is profound. Even if it's the martial arts of the mortal world, you're a cultivator at the 9th grade of Qi refining stage, yet you're praising me for being at the 2nd grade of body refining stage? Wen Bao was confused. This, in terms of strength, you're at least 10 times stronger than me. In terms of speed, we're about the same. The only thing I'm good at is the stability of my qi and blood and the toughness of my bones. But we're not fighting to the death, so we won't break our bones and bleed. What's more, you can breathe in and out the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and transform it into your own mana, while I don't even have much inner force. Overall, you have the advantage in almost every aspect, so why did you lose? Wen Bao was tongue-tied. Why? Wang Lu snorted coldly. Because you're a cowardly good-for-nothing. Being evaluated so bluntly, Wen Bao felt as if he had been forced to swallow a mouthful of mustard sauce, choking until he felt dizzy. Other than having a body full of fat, there's nothing else good about a good-for-nothing like you. No other sex would take you in. Even if they were to find an odd-job worker, they'd have to be nimble and quick-witted, right? Lingjian's school chose you as an inner disciple, so it's obvious that the elders in the school can't tell right from wrong. No wonder the school is declining day by day, and is regarded as one of the most unworthy of the Wanxian League. Congratulations, Fatty, your existence has dragged down the entire school's character. Although he'd suffered all kinds of criticism these past 2 years, in a school that valued harmony, this was the first time Fatty had heard someone speak so viciously to his face. The other party was the person he respected the most, Wang Lu. For a moment, his mind went blank and he was panic-stricken. However, Wang Lu's viciousness didn't stop there. Damn fatty, if I remember correctly, you're still the son of the state preceptor Kanglan in the mortal world? Heh, your father must have had a headache for more than 10 years to give birth to a good-for-nothing like you, right? Wang Lu, you? Fatty trembled in disbelief when his family was mentioned. Oh, from another perspective, to be able to give birth to a pig-like good-for-nothing like you, your father can't be a good person either. Maybe he'd even sigh that you're his biological son, ha ha ha. Wang Lu, shut up. Why don't we talk about your mother next? Oh, right, I forgot to ask, are you your mother's biological son? Ha 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 ha. Enough. Bang. Accompanied by Wen Bao's angry roar, the recondite iron sword pierced forward like a black lightning bolt. Wang Lu had expected it. He took a step back and blocked with his sword horizontally. The purple myrtle soft sword and the recondite iron heavy sword clashed violently. In the next moment, Wang Lu flew out like a sandbag. When he landed, Wang Lu staggered a few steps. He felt that his right wrist was numb, and he could barely hold his sword. More than 10 meters in front of him, Wen Bao looked at the long sword in his hand and the crack left on the stone floor. That was the power of the collision. He couldn't imagine that he could stab out such a powerful sword. Wen Bao stared blankly at Wang Lu, vaguely understanding the vicious verbal attack just now. But, why? You're asking why? I'd like to ask the technique imparting disciples of Ethereal Peak, why haven't you realized a simple fact after 2 years? Warriors need rage. As Wang Lu cursed, he shook his wrist and gripped the soft sword tightly again. Just now, he had taken Fatty's sword head-on, and his entire right hand was numb from the shock. Under Fatty's rage, he used the mystic iron sword technique to the extreme. His innate divine strength and earth element spiritual power stimulated each other, and the force acted on both inside and outside at the same time. How could the destructive power only multiply? Previously, when Wang Lu was roared by the full moon roar, his chi and blood were not shaken at all. But now, he couldn't even take Fatty's sword, which showed how powerful it was. On the other hand, this non-phase sword bone really had its marvelous place. In just a breath's time, the shock wave was completely digested by his body. And according to his master, the 8th layer of non-phase sword bone cultivation had just begun. It was hard to imagine what kind of miraculous effect it would have if he could successfully pass this extremely difficult stage. Wen Bao spent a long time to understand and digest the mysterious sword intent fusion experience of that strike. However, if he wanted to reproduce it again, he couldn't do it no matter what, which made him feel incomparably disappointed and frustrated. Senior brother Wang Lu, that strike just now. Is that the real power of the mystic iron sword technique? Wang Lu said, nonsense, otherwise, do you think a dignified immortal path sword technique is as cowardly and useless as the one you used before? Lingjian School is named after the sword, and sword technique is the family's specialty. Other sects like the 10,000 Arts sect have thousands of kinds of immortal path techniques with endless variety, but our Lingjian school pays particular attention to using the sword to enter the Tao, one sword to break 10,000 methods. Your black iron sword doesn't have any exquisite moves, nor does it have an endless stream of supernatural abilities. If you want to break through other people's tens of thousands of techniques, you can only infinitely increase your destructive power and become invincible, which is the level of your sword just now. These words made Wen Bao fascinated. Indeed, if he could master that sword technique just now, any spell would be vulnerable in front of it. Not to mention Zhu Qin, who was also at the 9th level of Qi cultivating stage. Even if it was his senior brother Yu Yun who was at the 6th level, it would be very difficult for him to resist it. The real one sword to break 10,000 methods. But, I can't use that sword technique just now. Wen Bao wryly smiled and then looked at Wang Lu with an expectant gaze. Nonsense, your anger has already been used up. Wen Bao froze for a moment. Indeed, after that sword technique just now, all his anger had disappeared, and he could no longer use the same sword technique. Could it be that this mystic iron sword technique was really driven by anger? No wonder he couldn't understand it in the past 2 years. After all, no senior brother was as simple and direct as Wang Lu, directly insulting other people's parents in order to accumulate anger. Wang Lu also said, a cultivator's 7 emotions and 6 desires are also energy. Otherwise, why would they say that cultivating method also requires cultivating the mind? The so-called cultivating the mind is the power to freely control one's emotions. When we reach the qi cultivating stage, in order to successfully build the foundation, we will begin to cultivate the mind. Don't you Misty Peak have the misty immortal heart? That is a first-class method of cultivating the mind. Hearing this, Wen Bao was suddenly enlightened. He repeatedly nodded and praised, Senior brother Wang Lu, you're really awesome, you know everything. Wang Lu kicked him. You pig head, you don't even know your own matters, and you still want me to tell you? Isn't this the F*** common sense of the sect? Wen Bao was kicked until his fat jiggled and scolded, but he was still overjoyed. He thought to himself that he had made the right choice to worship this master. The senior brothers who taught him before didn't think of this move. However, here came the problem. Now that he understood Wang Lu's good intentions, the same method could no longer arouse his anger. No matter how he scolded, the dead fatty's face would always be beaming with joy, not even the slightest bit angry. It doesn't matter, isn't this simple? Warriors have a universal method to accumulate anger. Whether you're smart or stupid, rich or poor, healthy or sick. As long as you're not a pervert, it will definitely be effective. Wen Bao's eyes lit up. What method? Well. Wang Lu stared at Wen Bao expressionlessly. After a moment, Wen Bao was stared at by this gaze until his heart and kidneys were weak, and he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Then, Wang Lu slowly said, if a warrior wants to accumulate anger, the easiest way is to get beaten. Ah! As he spoke, Wang Lu punched right in front of his face. Before hitting someone, first hit the face, anger has no limit. Chapter 45. That night, with bruises all over his body, Wen Bao happily left the Misty Peak martial arts practice field. Wang Lu's general method was indeed effective. That inhumane beating was undoubtedly effective. The fatty was a timid fatty, but he was also a spoiled fatty who was extremely afraid of pain. His instinctive fear of pain caused him to rarely experience pain for many years. The relatively mild cultivation of the spirit sword sect in the past 2 years had imperceptibly indulged him. However, Wang Lu was indeed a famous teacher. In just one afternoon, he had made up for Wen Bao's 2 years of shortcomings. All kinds of open and hidden injuries piled on top of each other. Wen Bao's whole body almost didn't have a single piece of good flesh. In the continuous pain and torture, Wen Bao's anger was also rapidly accumulating. This anger came from an instinct deep in his character. His fear of pain made him instinctively resentful toward anyone who caused him pain, even if the other party was his incomparably respectful senior brother Wang Lu. Behind this cowardly good-for-nothing, there was actually a powerful explosive force. His results in the cloud wave map were not obtained by luck. Perhaps this was also an important reason why the Lingjian school accepted him as a disciple. Unfortunately, the Misty Peak's 2 years of training disciples didn't really realize this. Fortunately, Wang Lu's eyes were sharp and he saw the problem. In one afternoon, under Wang Lu's beating, Wen Bao had used the perfect black iron sword at least 20 times. Among them, there was one time where he broke through Wang Lu's soft cloud sword with 3 consecutive sword strikes, and the last sword strike directly hit Wang Lu's chest. Wang Lu's complexion immediately changed. He felt as if he had eaten the Misty Peaks. Look up at the starry sky. His pain index instantly went through the roof. It could be said that he was better off dead than alive. At that moment, he regretted that he didn't use winding steps to avoid the attack. Instead, he forced himself to try the fatty's iron sword. However, the harvest of this sword strike was also extraordinary. All the main bones in his body were loosened by the black iron sword, and the efficacy of the bone-strengthening pill in his body was able to further permeate and volatilize. Especially between his chest and ribs, the efficacy went straight to his bone marrow. After an afternoon, most of the bones in Wang Lu's body felt cool and refreshing. His cultivation of the non-phase sword bone's 8th layer had greatly improved. According to Master's words, the first 7 layers of the sword bone would not have too obvious of an effect, but this insignificant effect was enough for him to withstand the roar of the full moon roar and face the fatty's black iron sword head-on. If he succeeded in the 8th layer, it was hard to imagine how strong his bones would be. TSK, is this the hardness that Wang Wu is so proud of? It was indeed extraordinarily hard. If one did not consider the fact that non-phase sword bone had almost no effect on other attributes, this cultivation method was simply a dream cultivation method. But now, it was really a pain in the ass. However, with his void spirit root, he was not qualified to be picky. Although the 8th layer of the non-phase sword bone was worth looking forward to, the real challenge was also in the 8th layer. According to the note left by his master, the day he succeeded in the 8th layer would be the day he drew the spiritual energy into his body. At that time, whether his non-phase method's compatibility would be unparalleled, or his void spirit root would be noble and elegant to death, it would be up to the heaven to decide. However, as the saying goes, man proposes, God disposes. Before the final moment, the preparation work could not be less. That night, Wang Lu carefully read the note left by his master twice, and then determined the next step of immortal cultivation, endoscope, internal vision method. The so-called internal vision method, as the name implies, was a skill to observe the internal structure of the body. It was also an indispensable part of the immortal cultivation. The usual practice of the Lingjian school was to let the disciples, during the qi cultivating stage, continuously draw the spiritual energy into their body, and then gradually master the internal vision method until they reached the foundation establishment stage. At that time, the internal vision method would also be pushed along with the current to reach the large success stage, laying the foundation for the next step of building the Jade Mansion. However, according to Wang Wu, if Wang Lu wanted to cultivate smoothly, it would be best for him to practice the internal inspection method in advance, so that he could master the first stage of the qi cultivating stage with the skill of subtlety, drawing the qi into his body. As for the cultivation of the internal vision method, it was not difficult. As long as there was a teacher to guide him, a talented person could master the initial stage within a week. Wang Lu's talent was naturally not a problem, whether it was in martial arts or immortal cultivation. Unfortunately, he lacked a teacher to guide him. His master, Wang Wu, had gone out to sell medicine, and he didn't know when she would be expelled by the relevant department. When she returned to the Spirit Sword Mountain, he couldn't count on her. Fortunately, learning the internal vision method did not necessarily require the help of an immortal cultivator. Many brilliant martial artists in the mortal world were also experts in this field. Rumor has it that the highest stage of immortal cultivation, seeing deity invulnerability, was achieved by using the internal vision method to the extreme. And Wang Lu happened to know that he had such an expert by his side. The next morning, Wang Lu knocked on the door of the Ru family inn in the Spirit Creek town. "Lady boss, lend me your endoscope." "What?" "Oh, I'm sorry, I mean teach me the internal vision method." The lady boss rubbed her sleepy eyes. "Are you sick? You can be saved." "Damn, what the hell is going on? You can't even let me have a good sleep. You don't plan to seriously walk on the road of martial arts, so why are you in such a hurry to learn the internal vision method?" Wang Lu shrugged. "I can't disobey my master's orders." Only then did the lady boss become a little more serious. "Did Wang Wu say that? Alright, let's practice then. I also want to see how you, with your void spirit root, can cultivate the immortal path." "Thank you very much." "You're welcome. It's not that difficult." In reality, it was indeed not difficult. All the lady boss did was hold Wang Lu's hand and send pure inner qi into his body, circulating it around his body and stimulating his inner qi. At the same time, she guided Wang Lu's breathing, causing him to fall into a deep meditative state, isolating his 5 senses and focusing all his attention on the minute changes in his body. Even an ordinary person without any cultivation would be able to sense the changes in his body, such as his internal organs, bones, and muscles. However, that feeling was like a blind man touching an elephant, unable to see the whole picture. With the deepening of cultivation, a person's perception would become more and more acute, until the last layer of window paper was pierced. In the long night, the light was ignited, and one could clearly see oneself. For Wang Lu, who had been in the medicinal bath for 2 years and had a small success in non-phase sword bone, the only thing he lacked was that last step. Although many people were limited by their perception and would be stuck at this stage for a long time, Wang Lu certainly would not disappoint. When the lady boss's inner qi completed the first major circulation, he saw the light in the dark night. The lady boss, who was holding Wang Lu's hand, felt his breath stagnate for a moment. She couldn't help but smile. "What do you see?" "Roads." Wang Lu's eyes were closed and he slightly frowned. "Many roads." "Oh, where do they lead?" "I can't see." "Each road leads to a distant place that is hard to reach, and at the end of the road, it's still night." "That's not strange. After all, you have just learned the inner vision method. Before you formally cultivate your primordial spirit, your vision won't be too far." "But, can you move your vision?" "Yes. I'm trying to move forward along one of the roads. There are many forks in the road, and this road seems to form a loop back to the starting point." The lady boss smiled. "Because those roads are the meridians in your body. You have been in the medicinal bath for 2 years. Although you haven't cultivated your inner qi, the meridians in your body have already been cleared, so you can see a smooth road. Otherwise, you would have been blocked halfway. So that's how it is." Wang Lu nodded and opened his eyes. He looked a little tired. The lady boss said, "The first time you use the inner vision method, don't last too long. If you feel tired, then rest. This is the consumption of your primordial spirit. No matter how strong your physical strength is, you can't make up for it." "I understand. It's inevitable that the first time is short." "It's not shameful." "If you say it like that, then it's shameful." Then the lady boss kicked Wang Lu out of the door. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had passed. During this month, Wang Lu and the fatty had been practicing their sword in the training field every day. The fatty's black iron sword was getting sharper and sharper. Although his moves were still as bad as dog shit, as he became more adept at using his anger, his lethality increased day by day. Wang Lu's soft cloud sword had gradually been unable to keep up with the rhythm. It was difficult for him to easily divert the opponent's tremendous force and play with the fatty. However, on the other hand, his non-phase sword bone cultivation had also advanced by leaps and bounds. Although he had not yet reached the 8th layer, the hardness of his body was still rapidly growing. There was one time when Wang Lu was in a bad mood. The black iron sword struck him 3 times in a row, knocking the soft cloud sword out of Wang Lu's hand. Thereupon, Wang Lu simply raised his arm and used his flesh and blood to block the fatty's heavy sword. Again, 3 times in a row. Finally, he took the opportunity to slap the fatty's face, which nearly scared the fatty out of his wits. The price of that shocking performance was that the bones in Wang Lu's arms were completely shattered. It took him a full 3 days to recover. However, because the bones were shattered, the bone-strengthening pill penetrated deeper than ever before. After the recovery, not only did the hardness of the bones in his 2 arms went up a notch, but he also got an unexpected harvest. Wang Lu's internal inspection method had also been upgraded. Perhaps the disintegration of the non-phase sword bone was too much of a stimulus for the body. During the time when the bones were healing, when Wang Lu was meditating, he clearly saw that on the side of the Meridian Road, there were hundreds of hazy jade pillars that seemed to be able to support the sky and the earth, piercing the darkness. Among them, there were several jade pillars that faintly emitted a golden light, which was particularly conspicuous in the darkness. When he asked the lady boss, the explanation he got was that his internal inspection method had been upgraded. Now, not only could he see the meridian, he could also see the bones. If he continued to practice, he could also see the stars in the sky, which were the acupoints all over the body. At the same time, he might also see the surging rivers, the towering mountains, which were the chi, blood, and muscles. Then, when everything inside his body was reflected in his eyes, his internal inspection method was also successfully completed. Naturally, Wang Lu was still far from reaching the consummate level of internal inspection method. However, this time's advancement still brought him great benefits. Because he could observe the non-phase sword bone from a clearer perspective, it meant that he could do more targeted training. As long as the bones that flashed with golden light appeared in his internal inspection method, it meant that he had already met the requirements of the current stage and could no longer pay attention to it. When all of the more than 200 bones in his body flashed with golden light, it was the time when the 8th layer was about to be successfully completed. On the other hand, with his internal inspection method becoming more and more clear, Wang Lu could also, with the help of the lady boss, regulate his qi and blood with his breathing, and use his qi and blood to transfer the efficacy of the medicine, which allowed him to focus on some remote bones that were difficult to take care of. In this way, both Wang Lu and the fatty grew rapidly between pain and happiness. In Wang Lu's words, this was probably a threesome. After a month, Wang Lu's 8th layer of non-phase sword bone was finally close to the consummate level. The toughness of his body had increased several times, and he was already close to the foundation building stage, where his magical power could run through the inside and outside of his body. And the dead fatty was also contentedly practicing the first 6 layers of the black iron sword technique to the extreme. Compared to the useless dead fatty from a month ago, he was now more than twice as strong. However, this kind of rapid progress was based on the solid foundation that Biyao had built in the past 2 years. Following this, he had to take it step by step. On one hand, he had to continue to draw spiritual energy into his body, accumulating spiritual energy inside his body. On the other hand, he had to continue to study the black iron sword technique, cultivating the 4th layer of the sword technique, and these 2 things were not something that could be accomplished in a day. On the other hand, Wang Lu's non-phase sword bone had also reached the final bottleneck. He needed a period of accumulation before he could break through the bottleneck in one fell swoop. However, Biyao was still not satisfied. He asked expectantly, "Senior brother Wang Lu, what should we do next?" Wang Lu wrinkled his brows and seriously thought for a while. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind. "That's right, we should go for experiential learning." Chapter 46. Next, we should go for experiential learning. Biyao froze for a moment. Experiential learning? Senior brother, do you mean the experiential learning in the small clear sky peak? Next, we should use actual combat experience to make a breakthrough? Wang Lu sneered. Mortal's wisdom. There are usually 3 kinds of so-called experiential learning. The first kind is ordinary experiential learning, just like those 2nd and 3rd-rate sects in 9 regions. They send their disciples to the wilderness and let them fend for themselves. The second kind is artistic experiential learning, which is the time when Yun led the team. Most of the situation was under his control, and there was no danger. The last kind is our next experiential learning. In addition to accumulating actual combat experience, the most important task is to earn challenge points. Biyao looked puzzled. What are challenge points? Wang Lu said, "Hey, you don't know? Is it not open to ordinary inner court disciples? Simply put, it's a reward set by the Lingjian school to encourage its disciples to constantly challenge their limits. As long as they can complete a difficult challenge, they can earn special points. These points are much more valuable than the points that you can earn from the daily tasks. Many rare magical tools and methods need challenge points to exchange. More importantly, the accumulated challenge points can be used to exchange for human resources. Human resources? It's to let the sect elders do things for you, such as escorting you to complete some experiential learning, helping you refine some magical treasure, and so on. Of course, the cost of working with a Yuanying stage-old monster is not cheap, and the exchange points are astronomical. Hearing this, Wen Bao was fascinated. Turns out there are actually such points. But, senior brother, with your ability, you must have gotten a lot of challenge points, right? Wang Lu smiled but didn't answer. He indeed got a lot of challenge points. How could the title of the top student of the Spirit Sword School be a joke? Completing a single A+ subject could only get 1 or 2,000 ordinary points. But completing 6 A+ subjects in 2 years and obtaining the title of erudite could get more than 3,000 challenge points. These were challenge points, which were much more valuable than ordinary sect points. They could even be exchanged for spiritual treasures. However, he had other uses for these challenge points. Not only could he not waste them, but he also had to find a way to continue accumulating them. Although the challenge points for cultural subjects were generous, after obtaining the title of erudite, there were only a few small fries left. Wang Lu was not interested in them at all. For a first-grade body forging cultivator who had yet to officially enter the ranks of cultivation, the best option was to challenge a sect. To put it simply, it's to complete a sect training under overwhelmingly disadvantageous conditions, and then calculate the challenge points according to the results of the training. For example, if we go to the small clear sky peak without a leader and complete our previous experiential learning, we can get 1 or 200 challenge points. Wen Bao was shocked. There's no leader, and there are fewer people than last time? Isn't that just courting death? Moreover, this extreme challenge is only worth 1 or 200 points. Wang Lu said, the challenge points are worth a lot of money, so, are you interested? Wen Bao hesitated for a moment. Senior brother, I am indeed interested in the challenge points you mentioned, but this kind of trial is not realistic for me. Senior brother, you are so powerful, wouldn't it be better to complete it by yourself? Wang Lu said, it's true that there will be extra points if I do it alone, but if I do it alone, I can only complete the minimum conditions of the experiential learning challenge. Getting the minimum points would be very boring. But with you, it's different. The fat man shivered. Senior brother, you think too highly of me. A stupid person like me will only hold others back. I can't bear the expectations. Wen Bao's cowardice did not surprise Wang Lu. Speaking of which, 2 days ago I met junior sister Yu Xinyao of the Carefree Peak at the 4 Divisions Peak. Ah. Hearing Yu Xinyao's name, the fat man's eyes suddenly lit up, and his breathing became faster. Wang Lu pretended not to see it and said, because we rarely meet, I chatted with her for a while. Wen Bao asked with a trembling voice, Senior brother, what did you and junior sister Yu talk about? Nothing much, nothing more than thanking me for saving everyone in the small clear sky peak last time, and then deeply admiring and curious about my kung fu. There's nothing much to talk about. But since it's rare to meet her, I asked about something else. Wen Bao was curious. Something else. Wang Lu said, yes, I asked her at that time, junior sister, you are not young anymore, when will you consider getting married? Puff. Wen Bao spurted on the spot. Junior sister Yu is not even 14 years old, and you want her to consider marriage? However, he was worried. I remember. Junior sister Yu seems to be the daughter of a certain immortal cultivator family in Yunzhou. Maybe she really has an engagement. Wang Lu said with a smile, there is no such thing as an engagement. Junior sister Yu told me that the Yu family is quite free, and the elders don't interfere much in marriage. Wen Bao was happy. Yes, the freedom of marriage is worth advocating. We can't be as ignorant as the mortals. Wang Lu said, then I asked, junior sister, do you have someone you like? Wen Bao's heart once again jumped to his throat. What did junior sister say? She said that there is no specific candidate. But she likes those cultivators who dare to challenge themselves and break through their limits. The path of immortal cultivation is long, and what she seeks is to break through again and again. For those who are afraid to move forward in the face of difficulties, she simply looks down on them. Biyao was suddenly silent. After a long time, the fatty put on a heroic expression. "Senior brother, please take me with you in this experiential learning challenge." Ha ha ha, he really believed it. After dealing with Biyao, the next step was to go to the Spirit Pool Peak to register for the experiential learning. Among the 12 peaks of the Spirit Sword sect, the Spirit Pool Peak was second only to the Stellar Peak. Although there was no feng shui line in this peak, and it was not a place for cultivation, it was the place where the sect's elders and senior disciples handled the sect affairs. In a more avant-garde word, it was the government office. The number of people in the Lingjian school was declining, so most of the sect affairs were decided by the peak leaders. However, in recent years, the sect continued to implement standardized management, so there were more and more affairs that needed to be handled, and the importance of the Spirit Pool Peak also rose. Of course, these things had nothing to do with a young cultivator in the body refining stage. After Wang Lu entered the Spirit Pool Peak, he went all the way into a simple and unadorned courtyard. Outside the courtyard, there was a broken plaque with the words, "Heavenly Policy Hall." There were 4 or 5 rooms in the courtyard. In one of the main rooms, an elderly disciple in black and white clothes was bowing in front of a table. Seeing Wang Lu coming in, the disciple raised his head, and the corner of his mouth slightly moved as if he was smiling. However, his simple and serious face looked very stiff. "What can I do for you?" Wang Lu said, "I want to go to the Clear Sky Peak for experiential learning." "Then please give me the relevant information." Wang Lu was already prepared. He took out a stack of paper and handed it over. The disciple, who seemed to be in his 30s or 40s, nodded slightly, took the information, and began to carefully read it. "Well, the location is the small Clear Sky Peak. The time starts this afternoon. It is expected to take 1 day. The number of people: 2. Only the 2 of you?" The black and white disciple read half of the information, then he put down the information in disbelief and stared at Wang Lu. Being stared at by him, Wang Lu suddenly felt that his body was a bit heavier. This senior black and white disciple, who worked in the Heavenly Policy Hall, was surnamed Mu Shao. He had been in the sect for more than 30 years. Although he was only a disciple, since he was able to oversee the Spirit Pool Peak, his cultivation base had already reached the Shudan stage. The little bit of pressure that he inadvertently released was enough to overwhelm a cultivator who had just entered the sect. Wang Lu secretly laughed, thinking, "Is this considered a show of strength? It's indeed a government department." However, with the non-phase sword bone and a genuine peak king pill cultivator for 2 years, Wang Lu was not afraid of this kind of pressure. He relaxed and smiled. "Yes, it's just the 2 of us." Seeing that Wang Lu was not the slightest bit oppressed by the imposing aura, Mu Shao was not too surprised. After all, he was a successor disciple, perhaps he had some magical tools or magical treasures. "What about your guide?" Wang Lu shrugged. "There's no guide." Mu Shao stared at Wang Lu in disbelief. After a long time, he was sure that the other party was not joking. "This is simply nonsense." Mu Zhao's sword-like eyebrows stood erect as he sternly shouted, "A 9th-level qi cultivating stage and a 1st-level body refining stage want to go to the small Clear Sky Peak for experiential learning. Who do you think you are?" Wang Lu froze for a moment. "Who are we?" "The information is very clear. I am Wang Lu, a successor disciple of the non-phase peak." Before he could finish his words, Mu Shao coldly interrupted him. "I know, Wang Lu, a successor disciple who miraculously entered the sect 2 years ago. According to the sect's rules, before I succeed in the King Pill, I should call you senior brother. But this is the Spirit Pool Peak, the Heavenly Policy Hall. Your successor disciple identity can't control me here." Wang Lu smiled. "Junior brother, you are too excited. I don't want to use my successor disciple identity to suppress you. Our father is not Li Gang. We just want to go to the small clear sky peak for experiential learning, so we want to register here. After a moment of silence, the black and white disciple resolutely said, "No, I can't agree to your registration requirements." Wang Lu frowned. I remember that since 15 years ago, the Lingjian school changed the disciples' experiential learning from the approval system to the registration system. As long as the submitted materials meet the requirements, after the registration, they can be released. But I have never heard that the disciple in charge of registration is qualified to reject the experiential learning application. Mu Xiao said, "The information is missing a guide, so the information is incomplete." Junior brother Wen Bao and I want to open the challenge mode. If there is a guide, how can we challenge? Mu Xiao expressionlessly returned the information. But without the guide's information, I can't let you go. Wang Lu tilted his head. AI, there is no guide, so where would the guide's information come from? I say, senior brother, don't be so stubborn about the rules. Rules are dead, people are alive. If you really have a hard time, then write me as the guide. I am a first-grade body refining stage master, so I plan to guide this 9th grade chi cultivating stage smurf. There should be no problem, right? But he didn't think that Mu Xiao would not accept this plan. Instead, he slammed the table. No problem. You have the nerve to say there is no problem? The Lingjian School's experiential learning management method clearly states that if you want to be a guide, your 6th grade chi cultivating stage is the bottom line. You are only a first-grade body refining stage master, and you can't even draw chi into your body. So what if you have the title of successor disciple? If you want to be a guide, you have to practice for 20 years first. Wang Lu then chuckled. Yo, you still remember the management method. It's more than enough to fool other disciples. Unfortunately, the one in front of you is the Spirit Sword sect's top student. Open your eyes wide and see how to write the word top student. Playing this trick in front of me? It's really interesting. Wang Lu hadn't been angry for a long time. In his 2 years in Lingjian school, most of the brothers and sisters were easy to get along with. Even when it was Zhu Qin, there was no deep hatred between them. Mutual ridicule was more out of a kind of living habit. However, this Mu Xiao really made him angry. Sure enough, when he ate at the Misty Peak cafeteria, he had heard people say that those senior brothers and senior sisters who worked at the Spirit Pool Peak were the most difficult to get along with. This was really true. F*CKU, do you think I'm afraid of you? In the 3rd chapter of the Lingjian School's experiential learning management method, the 2nd paragraph of the 14th article states that if the applicant wants to challenge the experiential learning, he doesn't need to submit the guide's information. Mu Xiao's eyes widened. He really didn't expect that the youth in front of him, who had just entered the school for 2 years, could actually recite the rules backwards. But it was meaningless. To apply for the experiential learning challenge, you need the permission of a hall master or above. Before he could finish his words, he saw Wang Lu directly took out a seal. The name seal of the 5th elder of the Heavenly Sword Hall is here. Quickly kneel and lick my boots. This time, Mu Xiao was really stunned. The seal of the non-phase peak's master. The seal that symbolized the authority of the elder was actually held in the hands of a little body refining stage cultivator. Yes, my master went out to travel, can't he forget the seal at home? How could he forget this? Nonsense, if the sect leader forgot to bring his glasses, then my master forgot to bring the seal. In short, the seal is in my hands, so you can definitely see the authenticity. This non-phase peak was really like what his master said, it was the strangest place in the school. But, are you using the title of elder to pressure me? Wang Lu was too lazy to beat around the bush. That's right, are you going to lie down or not? You. Mu Xiao's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This kid actually dared to show off in front of him. A mere non-phase peak's body refining stage cultivator, he actually dared to. However, no matter what impression the Misty Peak had on the non-phase peak, once the 5th elder's seal came out, he could no longer say anything. Oh, that being the case, then I wish you good luck. Experiential Learning Challenge? He he he. Mu Xiao sneered while receiving Wang Lu's information and stamping it with the seal of approval. However, Wang Lu was unwilling to let him go. What are you laughing at? You're putting on a fake smile. Do you have hemorrhoids again? Do you look down on me and fatty? Then let's make a bet. In this experiential learning challenge, I want to get 500 points. Mu Xiao suddenly smiled. 500 points. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Oh, Wang Lu, I know that in the last experiential learning you made a great achievement. Even the Moongazer roar was defeated by you. But you better understand, that kind of miracle is impossible to repeat. 500 points is the benchmark. For every point you exceed, you have to pay me 100 spirit stones. If you don't reach it, for every point less, I will pay you 100 spirit stones. Do you dare to play? Mu Xiao looked at Wang Lu. Do you have 50,000 spirit stones? Wang Lu smiled. This elder seal is worth 50,000 spirit stones, right? If I can't pay the spirit stones, I will give you the seal. What a joke. What use do I have for your seal? Take it to your master to ask for credit. If you can get the sex shame Wang Wu's elder seal, how do you think Uncle Lu Xian will reward you? Mu Xiao was slightly surprised, but his heart was already moved. Okay, then let's bet. Oh, what a joke. 500 challenge points. Dream on. I've been in the sect for more than 30 years and barely accumulated more than 300 points. It's true that Lingjian school has many talented people, especially those few true disciples and quasi-true disciples who have been in the sect for less than 10 years, they all have a lot of challenge points. But with your void spirit root, do you think you can be compared with them? Moreover, even if it's them, it's impossible to get 500 points in one experiential learning challenge. Kid, I'll wait and see how you cry. On the other side, Wang Lu, who had turned around to leave, was also sneering. Idiot. 2 years ago, when I was farming points in the Peach Blossom Village, you were still a pile of sh*t. Chapter 47. After leaving the Spirit Pool Peak, Wang Lu used the shrinking array to arrive at the Four Divisions Peak, the transportation hub of the Spirit Sword Mountain, which had shrinking arrays that led to each peak. Wen Bao had been waiting at the platform of the Four Divisions Peak for a long time. When he saw Wang Lu, he enthusiastically ran back and forth, as if he was a pet dog. Wang Lu had a smile on his face. He didn't look like he just had a big quarrel with the relevant department of the Lingjian school, nor did he have to carry a life-threatening bet. Just wait and see. Setting foot on the small clear sky peak again was a different feeling. Although it was only a month since the last experiential learning, in this 1 month, both Wang Lu and Wen Bao were not the same as before. Although there was no big change in their cultivation level, their strength had more than doubled. Therefore, deep in Wen Bao's heart, there was a trace of expectation in his hesitation. In the last experiential learning, his senior brother Wang Lu took away most of the limelight. However, aside from Wang Lu, his performance was really unworthy of the black and white robe that he wore. In just 3 days, he almost pissed his pants and barely managed to keep up. His performance was even worse than his junior sister Wen Yin, who wore the blue and white robe. And in this 1 month, along with his rapid progress in strength, Wen Bao sometimes couldn't help but think. If he could do it all over again, he would be able to perform better. He could even become a powerhouse that could catch the attention of junior sister Yu, and not that stupid dead fatty. Unfortunately, this time, he couldn't have that gentle girl by his side. On the contrary, he was accompanied by his senior brother Red and White, who he was in awe of. Even if Wang Lu's cultivation level was only at the body refining stage, and he didn't have the invincible destructive power of the black iron sword art, but in this 1 month, every wound on the fatty's body made him more aware that the progress of his senior brother was faster than him. But this was good, otherwise, he really wouldn't dare to come to this small clear sky peak with Wang Lu. So, senior brother, how are we going to proceed with this experiential learning? Is it still the same as before? Although there are only 2 of us this time, I believe we can do better than last time. A smile appeared on Wen Bao's simple and honest face. His tone was filled with pride. For a damned fatty who was still cowering a month ago, this was a very rare improvement. Unfortunately, with Wang Lu as a point of reference, Wen Bao's progress was immediately overshadowed. That's right. This time, we have to kill our way through. Wen Bao chuckled, then his smile gradually froze. Senior Marshal Brother, what did you just say? Wang Lu said, we'll kill our way through. The previous training could only be considered survival mode. Hiding and hiding is too boring. This time, we might as well use peerless mode. Senior brother, you're courting death. Wang Lu looked at Wen Bao as if he was looking at a pig. He then opened his mouth and said, Wen Bao, use your poor intelligence to think carefully. Even though you're only at the 9th level of qi cultivating, Wen Bao suddenly interrupted, thanks to Senior Marshal Brother's guidance, I recently showed signs of breaking through to the 8th level. Well, congratulations on breaking through the 9th level. I believe you should also know that in terms of attack power, you've even surpassed your Senior Marshal Brother Yu Yun. Wen Bao quickly waved his hand. How can I compare with Senior Marshal Brother Yu Yun? However, thinking of this month's hard work, his heart was filled with pride. However, if it's just a competition of instantaneous explosive power, I have confidence that I can beat him. The fatty said and clenched his fist to show his determination. That's right. Although Wen Bao was only at the peak of the 9th level of qi cultivating stage, he had abandoned most of the exquisite spells and focused on developing the black iron sword technique to the extreme. So, it's not surprising that his explosive power surpassed the 6th level of qi cultivating stage and Yu Yun's defensive ability. However, it was only his attack power that was strong enough. Once they entered the actual combat, an outstanding 6th level qi cultivating stage inner disciple would have 100 ways to avoid Wen Bao's sharp edge and attack his weakness in one strike. In fact, 1 month ago, Wen Bao couldn't even beat the 2nd level body refining stage, now 1st level Wang Lu. It doesn't matter, having explosive power is enough, leave the rest to me. Wang Lu smiled and looked at Wen Bao, who was still in disbelief. He decided that as a teacher, he should be more competent and share some of his experience as a professional adventurer. If it's just an ordinary experiential learning, there is no doubt that a cultivator with comprehensive qualities like Yu Yun would have an advantage. Because even in a place like the small clear sky peak, you can't accurately predict what you will encounter in the next moment. So, the more prepared you are, the stronger your ability to deal with complex situations, the better. But the challenge mode is not the same. Because of the difficulty setting, it is almost impossible for a stable adventurer to pass. Only people with extreme attributes, under the guidance of an extremely correct strategy, can burst out with miraculous power, and can complete the same miraculous challenge. These words made Wen Bao stunned for a long time. The fatty obviously couldn't adapt to the professional adventurer's theory. However, Wang Lu was a person who was good at educating people. Although your intelligence is not high, you should have learned the basic history of the 9 regions' immortal cultivation. There were several miraculous battles, which one of them wasn't created by extreme people? You and I, one is extreme in attack, the other is extreme in defense. This is the best combination to create miracles. This was also the biggest reason why Wang Lu was willing to accept this apprentice, or rather, this pet. With a bit of suspicion and a bit of expectation, Wen Bao followed behind Wang Lu and embarked on the road of experiential learning in the small clear sky peak. The last time they came here, it was under the guidance of Senior Brother Yu Yun. At that time, the group of people ran quickly, constantly using spells to sense the surroundings, and timely avoiding the dangerous monsters. As Wang Lu said, it was a survival mode. And this time, the one who led the way was Wang Lu. This successor disciple brother didn't take the usual route. He directly led Wen Bao to climb a lonely peak, which scared the fatty so much that he almost kneeled on the spot. Senior brother, this is a lonely peak. What can we do if we go up? If we want to go to the Azure Dragon Gorge, we have to take another route. Wang Lu said, only if we go up will we be able to fight monsters. Fight monsters. Yes, a category 2/3 rank stonewood ape. On that lonely peak, there is a stonewood ape's habitat, let's go and destroy it. Stonewood ape. When Bao exclaimed, he couldn't believe that senior brother Wang Lu's ambition was so strong. A category 2/3 rank monster, even if it was senior brother Yu Yun, he would have to spend a lot of effort to defeat it in a one-on-one fight, but to destroy the habitat of a stonewood ape. Senior brother really wanted to shock people to death with his words. Wang Lu sneered. According to the sex calculation method, the average cultivation of the two of us is stuck between the body refining stage and the chi cultivating stage. We can't even be considered as official immortal cultivators. If we can defeat a stonewood ape, we'll get 20 challenge points. Wen Bao was surprised, only 20? Otherwise, do you expect to get 200,000? Then our Lingjian school will have to wait to collect the corpses of the newcomers who try to challenge it. This score is very reasonable. Wait until you come back alive, then you will understand the value of challenge points. Come back alive. Moreover, there is an old saying that many grains of sand can form a tower, and many a little makes a mickle. A stonewood ape is 20 points, and in this small clear sky peak, the existence of stonewood apes is innumerable. While speaking, Wang Lu took the lead in climbing the steep mountain rock. For this person who grew up in a mountain village and climbed the non-phase peak all day long, climbing the mountain was simply an instinct. Although he didn't have a brilliant lightness skill, nor did he have the assistance of spiritual energy and magical power, his climbing posture was not elegant, but his speed was extremely fast. Before long, he had already climbed halfway up the mountain. As for Wen Bao, carrying his fat body and a heavy black iron sword, he could only look up at the starry sky at the foot of the mountain, not knowing what to do. Fortunately, after a while, Wang Lu threw down a piece of rope from above. With the help of the rope, Wen Bao finally began to slowly climb up. His slow speed was simply a disgrace for his peak 9th level chi cultivating stage cultivation. After half an hour, Wen Bao endured the humiliation and climbed to the top of the mountain. He took a deep breath and looked at the small open space on the top of the mountain. Senior brother, where are the stonewood apes? Wang Lu said with a smile, they are not dead otakus, how could they stay at home all day long? Most of the time, the stonewood apes wander around looking for food, until they notice that their home is invaded by outsiders, then they will quickly return. As soon as his voice fell, Wen Bao heard a burst of terrifying beast howling from below the lonely peak. The stonewood ape is a kind of monster with a very strong sense of territory. It likes to live among the rocks with dense vegetation. Although it seems to move slowly, it has the ability to escape through the earth and can move quickly with the help of rocks. Wang Lu recalled the results of this month's cramming on the monsters of the 9 regions while giving instructions to Wen Bao. Stand in your current position, wait for the stonewood ape to appear, and then directly use your strongest power to attack it. Hearing the howling of the stonewood ape, Wen Bao instinctively felt his legs go soft. However, under the stern gaze of Wang Lu, he very quickly untied the heavy sword on his back and held it in his hand. After several deep breaths, his eyes gradually began to turn red. This was a skill that Wen Bao had finally comprehended after suffering a month of torture. Through deep meditation, he would constantly relive the infuriating memories to accumulate anger and avoid the pain of the flesh. In fact, this was already involved in the scope of cultivating the mind. With Wen Bao's perception and cultivation, it was reasonable to say that it was far from being able to master this skill. However, after a month of painful practice, the fatty had successfully burst out his potential. Unfortunately, this skill was slow, and his anger would be wasted, so it didn't have much practical value, unless he could wait for the hare to come to him like now. The speed of the stonewood ape was indeed very fast. Before Wen Bao could completely accumulate his anger, a thick gray arm suddenly rose up from under his feet. It went straight to the vital point between his thighs. The stonewood ape, with the help of the earth escape technique, moved inside the mountain of the lonely peak. Apart from its roar, it was completely silent. This claw came fast and ruthlessly, completely catching Wen Bao by surprise. Even Wen Bao himself didn't feel it. However, it was as if Wang Lu had the foresight. His purple soft sword flew out like a whip, and the soft cloud sword art's power dissipation ability was immediately exerted to the extreme. After a sound of metal colliding with stone, the purple soft sword, under the effect of the huge force, curled up into a ball. However, the stonewood ape's attack was blocked head-on. The giant ape that broke through the mountain wall was stopped, and then it suddenly sank down. When it regained its strength and broke out of the ground again, it was greeted by a heavy sword that looked like a fire stick. Bang! The arm that hurriedly tried to block was swept away by the soft sword, and the black iron heavy sword hit the exposed top of the stonewood ape's head. After a loud sound, the gray stone skin on the top of the giant ape's head suddenly burst open. The giant ape also let out a blood-curdling scream and became unconscious. Half of its body was stuck in the rock, unable to move. Wen Bao was overjoyed that he had easily knocked out a Category 2 third-rank monster. However, before he could say anything, Wang Lu had already slapped him in the face. Quickly accumulate anger, the next one will come soon. Wen Bao quickly hypnotized himself, and his eyes once again became blood-red. At this time, the second stonewood ape also arrived. Learning from its companion's lesson, this stonewood ape didn't use the earth escape technique to sneak attack, but instead quietly appeared a little further away, trying to observe and then make a decision. Unfortunately, Wang Lu simply didn't give it the time to do so. Using the winding step, he directly rushed up. The space on the isolated peak was limited, and the stonewood ape was not good at speed, so it simply couldn't dodge. It roared and prepared to fight head-on, but then Wang Lu directly hugged its thigh. Being hugged by someone, the giant ape was flattered. It swung its fists that were powerful enough to break gold and stone, and fiercely pounded. As a Category 2 third-rank monster, the stonewood ape's attack was enough to kill a lion or tiger, but this time, no matter how fiercely it pounded, the person on its thigh didn't feel any pressure, and was even waiting for an opportunity to attack its lower body. The stonewood ape had lived in the small clear sky peak for many years, but it had never seen such a shameless attack. While it was stunned, a black shadow swiftly stabbed in front of it, and it could no longer dodge. Bang! The stonewood ape was full of resentment and the black iron sword hit its chest. Rubble splashed everywhere, and it let out a muffled groan before fainting on the ground. After defeating these two stonewood apes, the third one did not appear, which made Wen Bao very relieved. Using the black iron sword to its limit consumed a lot of physical strength. Even after a month of hard work, it was still impossible for him to use all of his strength to stab more than 3 times. However, although he was tired, looking at the two fainted stonewood apes on the ground, Wen Bao's heart was overflowing with a sense of accomplishment. A month ago, against 2 stonewood apes, senior brother Yu Yun, who was at the 6th rank of the Qi cultivating stage, could only barely delay them. But now, with the cooperation of senior brother Wang Lu, they actually achieved an amazing victory. Moreover, he had personally knocked them down. Of course, Wen Bao was also soberly aware that more than 80% of the credit for this battle belonged to his senior brother. It was his senior brother who found the enemy's lair, so that he could wait for them to exhaust themselves, and it was also his senior brother who entangled their hands and feet, making them unable to resist. What he had to do was the same as what he had done countless times in the martial arts practice field: accumulate anger, and then release it. There was no difficulty at all. However, a victory was still a victory. If junior sister Yu could see all of this, it would be great. While Wen Bao was still immersed in the joy of victory, Wang Lu had already begun to descend the mountain. Don't just stand there, the next round is about to begin. Ah, so fast. Peerless mode, of course, it has to be fast. Chapter 48. After that, Wang Lu, together with Wen Bao, successively knocked down more than 10 monsters in the small clear sky peak, ranging from Category 2 3rd rank to Category 1 1st rank. Basically, they used the same routine, taking advantage of the enemy's unprepared home, and then waiting for the other party to rush back. They ruthlessly killed them. Along the way, Wenbao felt like he was in a dream. He thought that this small clear sky peak was definitely a dangerous place for a 9th level qi cultivating stage like him, but now it seemed like it was really nothing. As long as he obediently followed his senior brother, he would be able to earn a lot of challenge points. Along the way, including the bonus rewards from consecutive kills, he had earned more than 200 challenge points. Senior brother was really worthy of being his senior brother. In fact, Wang Lu's contribution was more than what Wenbao realized. No matter how tacit understanding he and Wenbao had, their cultivation was still a shortcoming. If they didn't grasp the right time and place, not to mention Category 2 3rd rank Stonewood apes, even if it was a Category 2 4th or 5th rank monster, they wouldn't be able to deal with it. But how could it be so easy to grasp the right time and place? Along the way, Wang Lu almost without any mistake directly touched the lair of each monster, just like a skilled hunter who had lived here for a long time. Of course, Wang Lu didn't live here for a long time. However, more than a month ago, when he and his master were plundering the small clear sky peak on a bamboo sword, Wang Lu quickly grasped the whole picture of the small clear sky peak. Coupled with the heavenly spirit root's keen sense of the surrounding spiritual energy, and the reasoning ability of a professional adventurer, coupled with some of the sect's internal information, he gradually speculated the lair of many monsters. And this was also one of the key cards of Wang Lu's experiential learning challenge. For this experiential learning challenge, Wang Lu had prepared for more than half a day. For a bookworm, half a day's time was enough to prepare too many things. Before setting off, Wang Lu not only compared the map of the small clear sky peak to analyze the distribution of the monsters, but also drafted several sets of plans to deal with each type of monster. When all the preparations were completed, Wang Lu really set foot on the road of experiential learning. At this time, for a professional adventurer, he simply followed the strategy to break through the Full Moon Valley. He analyzed the most and had the most confidence in the first part of the Full Moon Valley, which was almost perfectly executed. He had already obtained more than 200 challenge points, which meant that he had completed half of the mission. However, as the saying went, the closer you get to the task, the more difficult it would be. Starting from the Lotus Pond, the real problem began. Starting from the Lotus Pond, the distribution of the spiritual monsters became much more complicated. There were very few long-term fixed strongholds. At the same time, the migration of the spiritual monsters also became more frequent. The last time he followed his master to fly on the flying sword, he didn't see the entire situation in this area. Considering many factors, this part of the strategy was the one that Wang Lu had the least confidence in. After all, Wang Lu was just a small cultivator in the body refining stage, far from the sect leader of the Spirit Sword sect who had the stellar diffraction technique. Therefore, starting from the Lotus Pond, he finally encountered the real difficulty. Wang Lu and Wenbao walked along the edge of the Lotus Pond. However, when they passed by a quagmire, they encountered an unexpected surprise attack from a monster. Senior Martial Brother Wang Lu. What the hell are these things? Seeing the tide of palm-sized, toad-like monsters with long tails gathering around them, Wenbao could not help but feel a burst of nausea in his chest. After a moment of silence, Wang Lu announced the answer with a heavy tone: long-tailed poisonous frog, Category 1 6th rank. It has sharp teeth, and its saliva contains poison. Other than that, it doesn't have any other special characteristics. However, it lives in groups. Living in groups, in many cases, could be a heaven-defying attribute. A pack of jackals could drive away a tiger, and a pack of ants could swallow a giant elephant. Long-tailed poisonous frog was only a Category 1 6th rank monster. Not to mention among the monsters, even an ordinary jackal was a bit stronger than it. It was even more incomparable to a Category 2 high-rank monster like the Stonewood ape. If it was that full moon roar, with just one roar, it would be able to kill this tide-like long-tailed poisonous frog. However, Although Wang Lu could deal with the stone-wood ape and even the full moon roar, at this time, he couldn't deal with the long-tailed poisonous frog. Retreat. Wen Bao froze for a moment. Retreat? His senior brother, who had previously aggressively said that he would use the unparalleled mode, in the face of a Category 1/6 rank monster, actually said retreat. However, before he could ask, Wang Lu had already turned around and left. Seeing that hundreds of poisonous frogs were about to gather, Wen Bao did not dare to stay any longer and quickly followed. Fortunately, although Wang Lu had no way to deal with these hundreds of poisonous frogs, he easily found a dry path in the muddy ground and quickly led Wen Bao away from the scene. After running out of the long-tailed poisonous frog's territory, Wen Bao also understood this simple problem. Once they were attacked by this group of things, Wang Lu himself might not be affected, but he, Wen Bao, would definitely be gnawed into a pile of bones. At the same time, although the black iron sword technique was invincible, it did not have the ability to kill in a wide range. He could only knock out the stone-wood ape with a full blow, but he could not kill so many long-tailed poisonous frogs. This kind of group monster was the nemesis of the two of them. No wonder Wang Lu said to retreat. It was also no wonder that when Wang Lu first entered the small clear sky peak, he was particularly strict about the route. He could not even take a single wrong step. Wang Lu was deliberately avoiding this kind of group monster. Now that he thought about it, the dozen or so monsters that he had defeated before were all solitary type. Even if they lived in groups, their number was particularly small, so he could defeat them one by one through various means, such as the stone-wood ape. Senior brother Wang Lu was indeed a professional adventurer. This kind of heaven-defying strategy, Wen Bao would never be able to catch up to him. However, senior brother Wang Lu was not omnipotent. The encounter with the long-tailed poisonous frogs meant that the situation was gradually getting out of control, and this time, it was as if they were stained with a bad luck that they could not shake off. After changing several routes, they encountered a large number of monsters. These monsters were not high in rank, but their numbers were large enough to make them unable to attend to one thing and lose sight of the other, unable to continue fighting. Later, they unfortunately encountered 5 golden-haired red-eyed foxes. These foxes were agile and fast, and they were also good at guerrilla warfare. Although Wang Lu could protect himself, it was difficult for him to take care of Wen Bao. This caused the dead fatty to be bitten off by a fox, causing him to tremble in pain. At this point, the weakness of the extreme combination of Wang Lu and Wen Bao had been completely exposed. After running into a wall several times in succession, the scarred fatty was somewhat discouraged. "Senior brother, our harvest today is already very good, how about, we call it a day?" Wang Lu stopped his footsteps. "Call it a day?" The fatty swallowed his saliva and said, I'm not afraid, I just feel that if we continue to persist like this, the gains will not make up for the losses. This time, we have already earned a lot of points, and we have accumulated a lot of experience. Isn't it better to come again next time?" Wang Lu sighed. "Fatty, I told you to carefully look at the challenge points related to the rules, but you really slacked off. Let's be clear, it was not easy for us to successively knock down more than 10 different monsters in a single experiential learning. Now, every time we successfully knock down a monster, the challenge points will double. If we wait until next time, we won't have this opportunity. The principle of experiential learning is that regardless of success or failure, there is only one opportunity. After getting the points, completing the same challenge will no longer count the points. If we withdraw from the experiential learning now, next time, even if we knock down 100 stone-wood apes, we won't get any points. Hearing this, Wen Bao was surprised for a moment, and suddenly understood Wang Lu's insistence. Indeed, it would be a pity to withdraw when the points were doubled. However, no matter how unwilling they were, in the face of reality, how could they not bow their heads? The facts were in front of them. With their combination, it was simply difficult to move forward in the lotus pond. In fact, senior brother Wang Lu himself had said that this kind of extreme offensive and defensive combination, if they wanted to complete the experiential learning challenge, they could only rely on an extremely correct strategy. But now, it seemed that senior brother Wang Lu was unable to come up with a perfect strategy. It's only limited to the area around the lotus pond, that's all. The situation around here changes too quickly, and no one can predict everything in advance. Just a month ago, there was nothing in that quagmire, but a month later, it has already bred hundreds of long-tailed poisonous frogs. However, having said so, Wang Lu's tone was still not the least bit discouraged. But as long as we pass through the lotus pond and arrive at the Azure Dragon Gorge, the situation will greatly change. The fatty smiled bitterly, but we also have to pass through the lotus pond. Just now, after going around for a long time, it seems that we are getting farther and farther away from the Azure Dragon Gorge. You have a good sense of direction, young man. However, I have already expected this situation, so it is not difficult at all. Seeing the familiar smile of victory, Biyao was surprised. Senior brother, do you really have a way? In this small clear sky peak, the rank of the monsters that like to live in groups is not too high, and to deal with the low-rank monsters, the superior aura is the most efficient choice. This was the basic common sense of a cultivator, and Biyao also knew about it. But the problem was, one was at the 9th grade of Qi cultivating stage, and the other was at the 1st grade of body forging stage. Where would the superior aura come from? Fool, the biggest difference between humans and apes is that they know how to use tools. Wang Lu very carefully took out a small wooden box from the bag on his back, opened the wooden box, took out a small piece of fine white silk, and wrapped it around his wrist. Biyao frowned. What is this? A tool to clear the area. Biyao was about to continue to ask, but he suddenly found that the surrounding environment was strangely quiet. The lotus pond, which was rich in species, should have been a noisy place. However, when the white silk appeared, all kinds of monsters that were eyeing covetously in the dark and the flying insects and small beasts that were everywhere in the forest seemed to have disappeared. A deathly silence. In the distance, Biyao could vaguely see many monsters fleeing in panic. Biyao was inexplicably shocked. What kind of magic weapon is this? How can it have such a magical effect? However, this thing has such a miraculous effect, so its level must not be low. It has not been refined yet, but it can clear the area with just its aftermath. This superior aura is simply off the charts. Maybe it is a spirit treasure. But using a spirit treasure to complete the experiential learning challenge seems to have a serious deduction. Senior brother, won't you lose more than you gain? Don't think about these things that are beyond your intellectual scope. Wang Lu kicked the dazed Biyao. Don't just stand there, while the effect of the artifact is still here, hurry up and leave. Then, he secretly sighed in his heart. A Daoist master at the peak of King Pill is really domineering. Master, the original underwear you left in the bedroom is really useful. Chapter 49. With the help of the white silk, Wang Lu and Biyao finally crossed the lotus pond and entered the boundary of the Azure Dragon Gorge. The Azure Dragon Gorge was the last pass of the small clear sky peak. It occupied the largest area, had the richest resources, and had the highest experiential learning value and difficulty. Before the Azure Dragon Gorge, the strongest was the Full Moon Roar, a Category 2 first-rank monster. However, in the Azure Dragon Gorge, Category 3 monsters were not uncommon. In theory, the Azure Dragon Gorge should be a dangerous place for cultivators who had reached the middle level of the Qi refining stage or above, and more than 5 people traveling together, especially the latter part of the Azure Dragon Gorge. Because of the rich spiritual Qi, it often gave birth to upper-grade level 3 monsters who had cultivated Niden. Once a monster's Niden was formed, in theory, it was equivalent to a Shudon stage cultivator. However, cultivators often had magical tools and elixirs, so their strength was far higher than a monster's at the same level. As an ancient sect, the disciples of the Lingjian school had a solid foundation and brilliant cultivation methods. Their strength was higher than ordinary cultivators of the same level. Therefore, middle-level and even low-level foundation establishment cultivators could compete with monsters with Nadens. In the past 10 years, the Lingjian school had recruited a group of talented newcomers. At this time, most of them were between the middle level of qi cultivating stage and low-level foundation establishment. Therefore, the school simply let these people form a team. Under the supervision of a few foundation establishment and Shudan stage senior brothers, they would subdue or eliminate these monsters that had just formed their nadans, in order to hone the disciples' team combat ability. Just a few months ago, Yu Yun had participated in a monster crusade as the most tender newcomer. Because of his excellent performance, he was qualified to lead the more tender newcomer Zhu Qin and the others to the Azure Dragon Gorge for their experiential learning. However, for Wang Lu's group of cultivators, who had only entered the sect for 2 years and whose fastest cultivation was still at the low-level qi cultivating stage, the Azure Dragon Gorge was a land of death. Although Wang Lu and Wen Bao had successfully crossed the Lotus Pond, just as they entered the gorge, a gust of cold wind blew toward them. It seemed like the spell of the small clear sky peak was warning them not to throw away their lives. At the same time, the white silk on Wang Lu's wrist gradually lost its deterrent effect. The surrounding monsters and insects no longer fled in panic. Instead, they stopped and even tentatively gathered to see if it was real or not. Wang Lu inwardly sighed. This white silk was, after all, not a real magical tool. The reason why it could deter the group of devils was not because of the coercion of a superior, but because of the body fragrance left on the clothes by his master. A month ago, his master rode his flying sword and galloped through the Azure Dragon Gorge, wantonly plundering heavenly materials and earthly treasures. In order to avoid trouble, he released his Dan Qi, which shocked the entire Azure Dragon Gorge. Since then, the aura of this golden core cultivator had been deeply imprinted in the hearts of many monsters in the Azure Dragon Gorge, like a shadow that covered the sky and covered the sun. Even if it was only a wisp of body fragrance from the white silk, it was enough to make the spirits in this place panic and flee in panic. This piece of white silk was just an ordinary undergarment. It was neither a magic tool nor a talisman. No matter how it was used, it would not affect the challenge points. It could be called the most cost-effective magic tool. However, a magic tool was not omnipotent. If it was used too much, not only would the monsters become numb to it, but he himself would also appear to be abnormal. Therefore, Wang Lu quickly put away the white silk. Fortunately, the Azure Dragon Gorge had a unique advantage. There were not many gregarious monsters like the long-tailed poisonous frog, and there were even fewer wandering monsters. Therefore, although the Azure Dragon Gorge was a place full of strong masters, for Wang Lu, who was dedicated to challenging the limit, the danger was even smaller than the Lotus Pond. So let's get ready to work. From now on, as long as we can knock down any monster, our challenge points will increase by hundreds of times. Wen Bao smiled bitterly. The difficulty will also increase by hundreds of times. From here on, most of the monsters will be level 3 monsters. How can we fight them? As usual, we'll fight by trickery. So what if it's a level 3 monster? Find a way, and I'll show you how to torture a mythological beast. Wen Bao was taken aback. Senior brother, how can we torture a mythological beast? Go back and report to the sect leader, ask him to make a move. Do you still need me to teach you this kind of thing? In fact, objectively speaking, level 3 monsters are indeed not something we can contend with at this stage. There are more than 200 kinds of big and small monsters in the Azure Dragon Gorge, and at least 200 of them can easily kill us, even if I'm a super tough tank. Wen Bao counted with his fingers. Doesn't that mean that any of them can be fatal? Wang Lu said, not necessarily. There are also more than 10 kinds of herbivores, which act as food here. If we encounter them, we can at least escape. Even herbivores can only escape. Then, senior brother, how are we going to fight? Didn't I say it already? Trickery. As the saying goes, take advantage of his illness. The same principle applies to fighting monsters. The ecological environment of the Azure Dragon Gorge is so complex. Do you think we can't find 1 or 2 seriously injured monsters for us to take advantage of? Wen Bao's eyes lit up. So that's how it is. You're worthy of being senior brother. However, are seriously injured monsters so easy to find? Generally speaking, it's not easy, but this time, it's right to follow me. Thanks to the plundering a month ago, Wang Lu was very clear that there were too many things to take advantage of in the Azure Dragon Gorge. Last time, when his master was collecting herbs, although he released his Dan Qi, he also encountered a few hard bones. Those monsters were either possessed by the devil while collecting the spiritual energy in the sky, or their rationality was halved during their physiological period. They clearly sensed that the other party's strength was far above theirs, but they still roared and rushed over. And Wang Wu had never been a kind person. With a flash of her green bamboo sword, those monsters were seriously injured and unconscious. And Wang Lu clearly remembered that in a cave at the dragon's tail of the Azure Dragon Gorge, there was a Little Thunder that had its legs cut off and was forced to hibernate. Little Thunder was a level 3 lower grade monster famous for its speed. Its biggest weapon was its pair of powerful hind legs, as well as its innate ability to discharge electricity. If it was in its perfect state, even 100 fatties would be killed. However, last time when Wang Wu passed by, she cut off its hind legs with her sword and broke its thunder technique. This Little Thunder was very powerful, so it was the best choice to take advantage of the situation. Of course, it had been a month since it was seriously injured. Little Thunder was born with the ability to borrow the power of thunder and lightning, which could be used to injure the enemy, and also to treat internal injuries. However, Wang Lu clearly remembered that in the last month, there was no thunderstorm in the small clear sky peak, so Little Thunder couldn't borrow anything. And with its self-healing ability, it was impossible for it to regrow its broken limbs. The only problem was that Little Thunder's nest was quite hidden. Outside the cave, there was a natural illusion protecting it. Unless one was very familiar with the terrain, it would be very difficult to find it. But last time, Wang Lu followed his master and directly rushed into the cave to grab a few ground croon grass, so he remembered the terrain very clearly. Therefore, after half a day, Wang Lu pulled Wen Bao from a cliff and crossed into a deep cave. In the depths of the cave, a strange beast with a long brown tail and a broken lower limb looked up with a frightened expression. The Little Thunder obviously still remembered Wang Lu, who broke into the cave with that fiend a month ago. However, after a month, the Little Thunder's injury had only stabilized, and there was no sign of recovery. Moreover, no one knew how long it would take for the thunder spell that was broken by the bamboo sword to recover. Even so, when its territory was invaded, this little beast, which was less than 2 meters long, still propped up its body with its upper limbs. It bared its teeth, and between its teeth, there was broken lightning. Although it was seriously injured, a fierce beast was still a fierce beast. It even dared to fight against Taoist Master King Pill. So why would it be afraid of 2 low-level Qi cultivating stage cultivators? Wen Bao was startled by the fierce beast's arrogance. Monster, monster. Wang Lu strode forward and thrust his purple myrtle soft sword straight at its head. With Wang Lu's soft cloud sword art, which specialized in defense, and non-phase sword bone, which had almost no strength attribute, this sword strike did not have any imposing manner. It was more like a humiliating declaration of war. And Little Thunder showed its fierce beast nature. Even though its lower limbs were broken, it was not afraid of the opponent. It tilted its head and easily avoided the sword strike, and then, like a spring, it pounced forward with its upper limbs. Its fangs were aimed at Wang Lu's neck. If it was an ordinary opponent, with a bit of carelessness, it was likely that this pounce would hit its vital point. However, how could Wang Lu not be prepared? Although his right hand missed, his left hand, as if he had foreseen this, had already moved horizontally in front of his neck. Poochie. In a splash of blood, Little Thunder desperately bit Wang Lu's left forearm. Its sharp fangs penetrated deep into the muscle and went straight through the bone. Although the non-phase sword bone had comprehensively improved Wang Lu's defense and even allowed him to face the heavy blow of the black iron sword, under the bite of the level 3 monster, it seemed to be vulnerable. Senior brother. Wen Bao, who was behind him, was shocked. He never thought that his senior brother would be seriously injured. In a hurry, he didn't care whether he was afraid or not. Carrying his heavy sword, he rushed forward. However, when he arrived at Wang Lu's side, he saw him laughing happily. The next moment, Little Thunder suddenly loosened its mouth and coughed earth-shattering. It constantly twisted and twitched on the ground, looking extremely painful. Senior brother, this is... Wang Lu put down his bleeding left hand. It's nothing, I just smeared a small half bottle of concentrated super spicy mustard sauce on my hand. Heh, I wish it happy eating Wang Lu sashimi. What are you waiting for? Let's do it. Biyao froze for a moment, nodded his head, lifted his heavy sword, and easily knocked out Little Thunder, who was no longer able to dodge. Looking back, Wang Lu used the piece of white silk to bandage his wound and gave a thumbs up with his injured hand. Very good, 200 points in hand, oh yeah. 200 points. Double the points for consecutive kills, double the points for Azure Dragon Gorge, double the points for Little Thunder, and double the level difference between us and the level 3 monster. Under 8 times, 200 points is not an exaggeration. Wang Lu nonchalantly said and then stood up. Okay, let's get ready for the next one. You still want to continue? Senior brother, you. I only hurt my left hand, but I can still use my right hand, right? 200 points for one hand, I'm afraid there won't be such an opportunity in the future. Anyway, with the power of the sect, even if all our limbs are crippled, we can definitely save them. What are you afraid of? Senior brother Wang Lu, is this the professional spirit of adventurers that you mentioned? This is the persistence of achievement. The journey continued. Relying on Wang Lu's excellent memory and a bit of luck, the two worked together and used 3 days to carefully deploy and calmly carry out their plan. They successively defeated 3 heavily injured monsters, one of which even had the cultivation of level 3. Unfortunately, it was seriously injured, and after Wang Lu risked his life to entangle it, it was no longer able to resist Fatty, who was also in a bad mood. After defeating 4 level 3 monsters in a row, Fatty had already lost count of how many challenge points he would get for this trip. According to Wang Lu, achieving consecutive kills in Azure Dragon Gorge would also give him multiple reward points, so as long as he could continue killing, well, I'm afraid we can't continue killing. Just as Biyao was excitedly thinking about using tens of thousands of challenge points to exchange for spirit treasures, Wang Lu shook his head. We've almost picked up all the cheap things we could. No one knows what we'll encounter in the future, so there's no need to take that risk. Biyao was stunned for a while and was somewhat unwilling. But according to what senior brother said, as long as we can defeat another monster like Little Thunder, we may get as many as 500 or 600 points. We still need to be alive to get it. Do you really think we can survive in Azure Dragon Gorge with 1 level 9 Chi cultivating stage and 1 level 1 body refining stage? We're already fighting monsters 2 levels higher than us. Except for those who are seriously injured and dying, we can't beat anyone else. You'd better enjoy the mountain breeze and cool your brain. While talking, Wang Lu glanced at a hillside and couldn't help but be stunned. Among the trees on the hillside, a touch of vermilion firmly attracted his eyes. Although it didn't look any different from the small wild fruits that could be found all over the mountains, how could a professional herbalist not recognize the famous red refined fruit? Small Clear Sky Peak was full of heavenly treasures, among which 2 kinds of red fruits were particularly prominent. One was the vermilion fruit, and the other was the red refined fruit. The value of the red refined fruit was even higher than the vermilion fruit. Within the Lingjian school, it was priced at 10,000 spirit stones for 1 red refined fruit. 1 month ago, Wang Wu coveted the red refined fruit. That thing was a great help to her non-phase method. Unfortunately, the efficacy of the red refined fruit was restrained, so it was difficult to use her primordial spirit to sense it. At that time, time was limited, so there was no time to do a carpet search. Unexpectedly, this time, she actually accidentally encountered it. This kind of opportunity was very rare. Most of the medicinal herbs like the red refined fruit were collected by the peak master or his disciple at a fixed time. Now, this fruit was a fish that slipped through the net when the peak master was away. In fact, most of the medicinal herbs that Wang Wu swept last time were fish that slipped through the net. And when the peak master of the Clear Sky Peak went out to wander, his scheduled return time would probably be in 1 or 2 weeks. At that time, there would be no more advantages to take. However, the red refined fruit must be guarded by a monster. In the Azure Dragon Gorge, the most common guardian monster was the golden-lined scarlet snake. Although it was only a Category 3 low-rank monster, it was still far from being a match for him. Of course, picking the fruit and killing the monster were two different things. It was not necessary to fight the golden-lined scarlet snake to the end. However, relying on herself and Wen Bao, these two short-legged butcher team, in addition to fighting the opponent, what else could they do? Plan 1, Wang Lu as the bait, while the fatty went to pick the herb. Expected result, Wang Lu was seriously injured and dying, while the fatty clumsily crushed the fruit, resulting in a complete loss. Plan 2, fatty as the bait, while Wang Lu went to pick the herb. Expected result, ha ha ha. Plan 3, in the face of the temptation of the red refined fruit, Wang Lu could not make up his mind for a while. The persistence of the achievement party and the rationality of the professional adventurer began a fierce confrontation. However, in the end, Wang Lu could only sigh and give up on this fruit for the time being. Because no matter how he thought about it, based on the resources at hand, even if he risked his life, he would not be able to get the red refined fruit. Since that was the case, then there was nothing to be stubborn about. Anyway, the next step of the plan had already been made. Hee hee, some civil servant, I am coming to find you. Chapter 50. After crossing the screen wall in front of the hall, Mu Xiao looked at the gradually setting sun, feeling the warmth of the setting sun on his body, and could not help but feel lazy. Another leisurely day had passed, and there was only a cup of tea's time left before he got off work. If not for the strict sect rules, Mu Xiao really had the urge to leave early. He had been working in the Heavenly Policy Hall for 3 years. 3 years ago, he was entrusted by his master to come to the Heavenly Policy Hall, 10 days a month, 8 hours a day, to deal with the sect's official business. In fact, this job was not difficult. He just had to deal with some application materials and registration, and deal with some difficult problems. However, during the official business period, it was inevitable that his cultivation would be delayed. 3 years ago, whether it was the sect elders or the fellow disciples, they all felt that they had suffered a loss, especially his master, who gave him a lot of compensation, such as occasional supplementary classes, as well as various subsidies according to the sect rules. Therefore, Mu Xiao had no dissatisfaction with this job. Moreover, in the past 3 years, he also gained an unexpected surprise: the Heavenly Policy Hall signboard written by the sect leader. With this signboard, he was not only a shoot-on stage cultivator, but also a public official representing the sect's management. This difference in identity brought benefits in many aspects. In fact, if not for the sect's rules clearly limiting the duration of the disciples' official business, Mu Xiao would like to continue doing this. The delay on the path of cultivation was actually not a big deal. He had been cultivating for 37 years, and now he had reached the 4th grade shoot-on stage. His lifespan was close to 300 years, and in the next 30 years, with his earthly spirit root, it was entirely possible for him to become a Taoist master of the King Pill sect. Therefore, his cultivation space was still very broad, so why should he be in a hurry? However, the position in the Heavenly Policy Hall could not be sought. Although Mu Xiao enjoyed his life in the hall very much and wished he could work overtime every day, these days, he got off work very punctually, not daring to stay for even a moment longer, as if he had a guilty conscience. In fact, Mu Xiao was indeed a bit guilty. It all started from the dispute in the court 4 days ago. At that time, he and Wang Lu had a big quarrel, roared in the court, and made a very big bet. At that time, he was so angry with Wang Lu that he felt that this non-phase peak successor disciple's brain was simply flooded. A mere second-grade body refining stage cultivator dared to run to the clear sky peak, simply playing to the gallery, as annoying as his master, who was the disgrace of Spirit Sword sect. As for the bet of 500 challenge points, there was no way he could win. However, that night, Mu Zhao's mind was restless. Since he had nothing to do, he found the sect's historical records and flipped through the detailed records of Wang Lu's Immortal Ascension Assembly 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he happened to be in a 3-month closed-door training, so he wasn't able to witness the grand occasion. When the conference ended and he returned to work, the enthusiasm of the discussion in the sect also cooled down. He finally knew the result and did not care so much about the process. However, when he opened the record this time, he was so shocked that he gasped. Who would have thought that Wang Lu, who seemed to only know how to play to the gallery, was actually so fierce in the past? If it wasn't for the fact that his void spirit root was a pain in the ass, with his temperament and comprehension, he would be more than qualified to be the successor disciple of the sect leader. What was even more shocking was that in the Peach Blossom Village, they actually managed to get a score that almost caused the data of the illusion array to overflow. Other people simply could not be compared to him. The inner court senior brother who made the record was filled with emotion as he wrote his own comment. All the point-based trials and assessments are probably just a game for Wang Lu. Damn, this is not a game. This game can be played with people's lives. Thinking about the bet he made with Wang Lu, 500 challenge points, 1 point for 100 spirit stones, he thought that Wang Lu would at most get 100 or 200 points, and would end up owing him tens of thousands of spirit stones. But now it seemed. A few years ago, Master Lu Xian had once told a few black and white disciples in a small inner court class in a sincere and heartfelt manner. You are all talented immortal cultivation geniuses, but the 9 regions is vast and boundless, and there are all kinds of strange things. There are also geniuses who are more talented than you. And the gap between geniuses may be far beyond your imagination. At that time, his fellow disciples modestly listened to him and thought that he was probably referring to the new disciples that the elders had accepted in recent years. The gap was indeed very big, and it was very discouraging. But after a period of time, everyone had already adapted to it, so it was not a big deal. After realizing that Wang Lu was likely to be one of those geniuses who was beyond imagination, Mu Zhao naturally became restless. For the past few days, when he went to work, he was always afraid that that guy would suddenly come out of nowhere and ask him for money with a 4-digit challenge points record. Although rationally speaking, even those monstrous successor disciples would not be able to get more than 500 points, but if it was Wang Lu. While he was thinking, the last time to drink a cup of tea quietly slipped away. Looking at the bloody setting sun outside the hall, Mu Zhao secretly sighed in relief and prepared to get up and leave. However, at this time, a sound of footsteps came from outside the hall. Damn, it can't be. Is he trying to kill me? Mu Zhao was so shocked that cold sweat almost dripped down his forehead. However, when he moved his primordial spirit, he found that the situation was not what he had imagined. The person who came was not Wang Lu. Senior brother Mu Zhao, sorry to disturb you. Along with a gentle and polite greeting, a black and white disciple slowly walked to the front of the hall and cupped his fists to salute Mu Zhao. Mu Zhao was surprised for a moment. He recognized that the person in the lead was junior brother Yu Yun. Although his spirit root was only 3rd grade, his temperament was gentle and generous, and his perception was outstanding. His cultivation prospects were not below Mu Zhao's. Recently, he had been constantly tempering himself with actual combat, so his cultivation progress was extremely fast. Behind Yu Yun were the other disciples who had entered the mountain with Wang Lu 2 years ago. There were disciples from both the inner and outer sect. Their faces were covered in dirt, but it was difficult to conceal their joy. Seeing this scene, Mu Zhao understood and said with a smile, "Junior brother Yu Yun, is your experiential learning over?" Yu Yun nodded and said, "Yes. Last time, because of a variety of accidents, we couldn't finish the experiential learning, so. I was also meddlesome, so I suggested that everyone revisit the old place to make up for the regret from last time." Fortunately, the several junior brothers and sisters were very supportive, so we quickly formed a team. And this time, everyone's performance was really surprising. Yes, just a week ago, Yuyun had brought a pile of materials to the Heavenly Policy Hall, once again applying to join the sect for experiential learning. Because this application was not approved by the sect elder, Mu Xiao asked a few more questions to understand the reason, and also praised Yuyun and the others for their ambition. Now, seeing everyone's happy face, it was obvious that the experiential learning was a great success. Congratulations, junior brothers and sisters, I will help you with the relevant registration, please wait a moment. Yuyun cupped his hands and said, Senior brother has worked hard. We really came at the wrong time, senior brother just got off work. Hee, it's nothing more than writing a few words. Is your itinerary the same as what you reported? Yuyun said, it's the same as planned, it's still the same route as last time, passing through the Full Moon Valley to the Azure Dragon Gorge, and finally returning through the Lotus Pond. It took 6 days, 1 day less than the plan. Moreover, I'm the only guide, junior sister Huiying had something urgent to do, so she couldn't accompany us. Mu Xiao took notes at the table and nodded approvingly. Not bad. With your average cultivation and the absence of a guide, it's really good that you can do this. Yuyun smiled. Speaking of which, it's also a bit of luck. This experiential learning, from the beginning to the end, we rarely encountered particularly powerful monsters, especially around the Full Moon Valley, which should have been constantly harassed by monsters, but this time, it seemed as if someone had cleaned them up in advance, so it was especially easy. Mu Xiao smiled and said, luck is also a part of strength, junior brother Yuyun doesn't need to be modest, being able to avoid encountering monsters is the credit of your choice of route. While talking, Mu Xiao had finished filling in the record, but when he was about to close the book, he heard Yuyun said, Senior brother, I'll have to trouble you to record one more time. This time, several junior brothers and sisters got challenge points. Oh. Hearing about challenge points, Mu Xiao suddenly became serious. Please explain in detail, and show me proof. It's like this, when we were approaching the Azure Dragon Gorge, we encountered a Category 2 second rank monster. It stands to reason that I, as the guide, should be responsible for driving it away. However, the junior brothers and sisters proposed to fight on their own. I was just watching from the side, and when necessary, I would make my move. Then, they did a really good job, their cooperation was far more tacit than I expected, and their combination of spells and swordsmanship was also very proficient, so they didn't need my help to win. Category 2 second rank, how many of you? Mu Xiao was somewhat surprised as he looked at the several young disciples. The highest among them was only at the 8th level of Qi cultivating stage, but they were actually able to rely on each other to contend against a Category 2 second rank monster. For them, who still lacked actual combat experience, this was indeed a surprise. According to the sect rules, they could get challenge points. Although there was a guide during the whole battle, since Yuyun didn't make his move, the points would not be deducted too much. Mu Xiao calculated in his heart, and estimated that each of them could get close to 10 points. It seemed insignificant, but in the past 30 years, he had only saved 300 points. These people's one trip was equivalent to his 1 year of hard work. While thinking about it, Mu Xiao carefully sized up this new batch of disciples. Among the few young faces, Mu Xiao only recognized 2 who were also inner sect disciples of Ethereal Peak. One was Zhu Qin, and the other seemed to be called Wang Zhong. Seeing Mu Xiao's slightly puzzled face, Yuyun laughed and said, Senior brother, is junior brother Wang Zhong a bit unfamiliar? It's no wonder, junior brother Wang Zhong has been in the sect for 2 years, whether it's cultivation or anything else, he has always been very low-key, like a shy girl. Many Misty Peak disciples are not familiar with him. However, his basic skills are very solid. This time, I asked him to be senior brother Wang Lu's substitute to participate in the experiential learning, and his performance was also very eye-catching, not inferior to junior brother Zhu Qin and junior sister Yu Xinyao. At this time, Zhu Qin also generously patted the shoulder of the youth beside him. That's right, if it wasn't for junior brother Wang Zhong's timely support, I wouldn't have had the time to use fire palm. Being pushed to the front of the stage, Wang Zhong seemed a bit nervous. No, I just released the Imperial Sky technique to help senior brother dodge the attack, that's all. Senior brother's raging flame subduing dragon palm was the key to the battle. Zhu Qin laughed. I also have to thank junior sister Yu for releasing the water shield at the critical moment to help me block the claw, otherwise I would have been seriously injured. Oh, senior brother is overpraising me. It was thanks to junior sister Wen Yin's help that I was able to release the water shield. With a few words, Mu Xiao roughly understood the overall situation of the battle. Zhu Qin, who had the strongest basic skills, was the main attacker, while the others assisted him. And in this process, the most important figures were undoubtedly Zhu Qin and Wang Zhong, the two inner court disciples. Zhu Qin was the most popular newcomer in the inner sect in the past 2 years. Although his spirit root was not very good, his perception was strong, his character was good, and he was especially good at making friends, or in other words, he was good at accepting younger brothers. It had to be said that in this world, there was indeed such a kind of person who was born with the temperament of a leader. Even if they did not have an overwhelming advantage in strength, they could easily become the focus of the crowd and attract others to follow them. And this Zhu Qin probably had such qualities. Although he was still immature, intentionally or unintentionally, he was always able to put himself in the center of attention, attracting everyone's attention. And that Wang Zhong, although he seemed to have some kind of shadow in his heart, was undoubtedly a good talent, but he was willing to follow behind Zhu Qin as a younger brother. It seemed that this indirectly confirmed Zhu Qin's ability. Forget it, in any case, the matters of young people were good. Mu Xiao shook his head, and suddenly remembered something, so he asked, speaking of which, in the past few days of your experiential learning in the small clear sky peak, did you meet any other fellow disciples from the same sect? Yu Yun and the others looked at each other in blank dismay. No, it seemed that only our team was in the small clear sky peak. I see, Mu Xiao suddenly felt relieved. It seemed that someone was not as brave and invincible as he claimed to be. He thought that he would really dare to form a 2-person team to go to the small clear sky peak, but it seemed that he had overestimated him. This was also good, it would save him a lot of worry. With a great sense of relief in his heart, Mu Xiao handed over the completed information to Yu Yun. His attitude was particularly enthusiastic. Regarding the challenge points, I have signed my opinion on the certification document, but the final result must be submitted to the elder for approval, and the result will be announced in about 3 days. However, your information is very detailed, and it is all recorded on the sincerity paper, so there should not be any problem. So, on behalf of the Heavenly Policy Hall, I congratulate junior brothers and sisters for obtaining the precious challenge points. Although it may not seem much, it will add up, and there will be a day when it breaks 100, or even 1,000. Yu Yun smiled and said, then on behalf of junior brothers and sisters, I thank senior brother for your auspicious words. This time, I have dragged senior brother to work overtime until now, I am really sorry. How about junior brother be the host and let us all have dinner together? Mu Xiao froze for a moment, then smiled and said, it is rare for someone to treat me, then I will not be polite. These days, I have been eating at the Misty Peaks cafeteria every day, that taste. Zhu Qin also joined in the fun. This time, I have to thank senior brothers and sisters even more. If not for everyone's outstanding performance, I really could not find a reason to invite senior brother Mu Xiao to eat together. This is a very rare opportunity. Everyone giggled. It could be said that the host and the guest were happy. Even Wang Zhong, who always had a gloomy face, showed a sincere smile. 2 years ago, the little errand boy thought that the cultivation of the immortal path could make him independent and become an upright Wang Zhong. However, 2 years later, even though his cultivation was not inferior to others, even though there was no young master who would order him around, he still could not really get rid of the shadow of someone. Even if that person never said a word about his betrayal more than 2 years ago, and occasionally met him in the Tin Cloud Hall and other places, he would even take the initiative to greet him warmly. all of this made Wang Zhong feel even more sad and restless. He could not explain the specific reason, but in the past 2 years, he had been feeling very depressed. Usually, he would try to keep a low profile and did not dare to meet with Wang Lu. As an inner court disciple, he should have participated in the previous experiential learning, but when he heard that Wang Lu had also signed up, he casually found an excuse to decline. He would rather miss a precious experiential learning opportunity than to meet with Wang Lu directly. Fortunately, not long ago, senior brother Yu Yun found him and invited him to participate in the second experiential learning. This time, Wang Lu did not appear. Wang Zhong seemed to have suddenly vented his 2 years of resentment, and his performance was exceptionally eye-catching. Perhaps, this was the real beginning of independence and self-improvement. Amidst the laughter of the crowd, Wang Zhong could not help but think so. Just as everyone was preparing to leave for the Carefree Peaks dining hall, they heard footsteps coming from outside the hall. At the same time, they heard a conversation between 2 young cultivators. Senior brother, at this time, the Heavenly Policy Hall is already closed. Let's come back tomorrow morning. You don't understand. With senior brother Mu Zhao's diligence, he will definitely work overtime until dawn. If we come back tomorrow morning, won't we make him work day and night? That would be inhumane. Actually, senior brother, you just can't wait, so you came to try your luck. Nonsense. Ha, look, the lights in the hall are still on. I said I was working overtime. While speaking, the person who was talking walked out from behind the screen wall, and suddenly met the people who were chatting and laughing in front of the hall. Yo, so many acquaintances. Under the astonished eyes of the crowd, Wang Lu revealed an incomparably sincere smile. Chapter 51. How come there are so many acquaintances? Junior brother Yu Yun, junior brother Zhu Qin, junior sister Yu Xinyao, junior sister Wen Yin. Hey, that guy hiding behind the tree over there, he also looks familiar. What is he doing sneaking around behind the tree? Is he in a hurry? As soon as Wang Lu appeared, he greeted everyone with a smile, and finally turned his attention to the embarrassed person hiding behind the tree. However, after looking at him for a while and confirming that the other party had no intention of coming out from behind the tree, Wang Lu was too lazy to investigate further. This time, he didn't come to the Heavenly Policy Hall to be someone's bosom sister. Therefore, he quickly cast aside the other people and found the protagonist of this event, a certain civil servant senior brother with a vigilant look, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Senior brother Mu Xiao, don't be so nervous, I just have some information that I need to register with you. Although the time is not quite right, as a diligent and responsible person, you shouldn't mind working overtime, right? To be honest, Mu Xiao, who was very keen on the official business of the Heavenly Policy Hall, really didn't mind working overtime, but looking at the malicious smile on Wang Lu's face, he became very concerned. Especially when he saw the stack of information Wang Lu took out, his heart skipped a beat. The information in Wang Lu's hand was the same as the one Yu Yun had just submitted. It was the experiential learning report written by the experiencer himself using the sincerity paper. It was an important evidence to judge the experiential learning results, as well as reward and punishment points. The sincerity paper was specially made by the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall, and it was enchanted with a powerful restrictive spell. The restrictive spell only had one function: when writing on the sincerity paper, no lies could be written, so as to ensure the authenticity of the words. Of course, the restrictive spell of the sincerity paper was not unbreakable, but to deceive the sincerity paper, at least, only Taoist Master King Pill could do it. With the cultivation level of Yu Yun and Wang Lu, the sincerity paper they submitted should not be fake. Seeing the stack of sincerity paper Wang Lu took out and the title was Experiential Learning Report, Yu Yun looked at Wang Lu in surprise and then looked at Wang Lu. Senior brother Wang Lu, you also went for experiential learning? No wonder I couldn't find you these days. Oh. You too? Yu Yun nodded. That's right, because the last experiential learning was interrupted, we plan to start again. Originally, I wanted to invite senior brother and you to come together, but I couldn't find you for a few days. Speaking of which, where did you guys go to train? With whom? Oh, of course it's the small clear sky peak. At this level, besides the small clear sky peak, where else can it go? Yu Yun was even more surprised. Senior brother is also going to the small clear sky peak? We haven't seen you guys at all. A certain crown prince also timely added, we've been training in the small clear sky peak for 6 days, but we haven't found any trace of other senior brother and junior brother. Senior brother Wang Lu, did you and junior brother Wen Bao really go to the small clear sky peak? Mu Xiao was inwardly happy, thinking, that's right, with the conduct of the master and disciple of Non-Phase Peak, cheating on the report is a common occurrence. He said that he went to the small clear sky peak for experiential learning, but in fact, he might have just wandered around the non-phase peak for a week, and then used some unknown method to deceive the sincerity paper, fabricating a legendary adventure about the collapse of the world out of thin air, and then claiming to have obtained tens of thousands of challenge points. This is very logical, and also very consistent with the usual style of the non-phase peak. In the rumor, didn't that elder King Pill often use the sincerity paper to fool the disciplinary elder? This is a criminal record. Fortunately, he met Yu Yun and the others, who also went to the small clear sky peak for experiential learning, and as witnesses, they were enough to expose Wang Lu's lies. Ha ha ha, you are cunning, but you never thought that you would stumble here. However, the next moment, Wang Lu very naturally replied, it's normal that you didn't see us. These past few days, I basically stayed in the Azure Dragon Gorge. How could you, who are just on the periphery, see me? Azure Dragon Gorge. Yu Yun was simply amazed by Wang Lu. Senior brother, you actually went to the Azure Dragon Gorge. May I ask which senior brother led the team? Isn't this too bold? Wang Lu smiled again. I led the team. Senior brother, you led the team. Yu Yun was once again inexplicably shocked. He didn't think that senior brother Wang Lu would be so magical. With his body refining stage cultivation, he actually led the team. However, after being stunned for a long time, he suddenly realized another problem. In other words, it was only you and junior brother Wang Lu. Yes, what's wrong? What's wrong? A body refining stage cultivator and a chi cultivating stage cultivator dared to go to the small clear sky peak for experiential learning, but they actually dared to run to the Azure Dragon Gorge. If you don't seek death, you won't die. Why can't you understand? Don't be so surprised. Since you want to open the challenge mode, of course, you must have the spirit of seeking death. Challenge mode. What the hell is that? Senior brother, you can just say that you're going to throw your life away. However, looking at the lively Wang Lu in front of him, as well as the thick pile of reports, no matter how incredulous Yu Yun was, he had to accept the appalling conclusion. The two of them actually went to the Azure Dragon Gorge, and they even came back safe and sound. How did they do it? Even if the environment of the Azure Dragon Gorge was special, as long as one mastered the method, survival would be relatively easier than the Lotus Pond and other places. But with only 2 newcomers, no matter how he thought about it, it was absolutely impossible. Alas, successor brother is indeed worthy of being a successor brother, always able to do what others can't. With such a bright pearl in front of them, their second experiential learning suddenly became dim. Although unexpectedly getting challenge points was a good result, but senior brother went to the Azure Dragon Gorge with just 2 people and returned safely. No matter how you looked at it, his challenge points were far higher than theirs. It's not just me, don't we have a teammate? Wang Lu said, patting the fatty beside him. Yu Yun was slightly surprised. Wen Bao? It wasn't that he had any prejudice against Wen Bao, but from the perspective of a guide, Wen Bao, who was slow, not proficient in spells, and had extreme swordsmanship, was really not an ideal experiential learning partner. His value was more reflected in. Well, Yu Yun admitted that he really couldn't think of where Wen Bao's value could be reflected. But Wang Lu was able to turn waste into treasure, and with such a useless junior brother, he completed a shocking feat. Everyone else present was also as surprised as Yu Yun. Zhu Qin and Wen Yin were stunned. They couldn't convince themselves that the slow and stupid fatty could actually complete a great challenge that far surpassed their own. And a certain teenager behind the tree clenched his fist so hard that it was bleeding. After 2 years in the sect, Wang Zhong was very clear that Wen Bao was a waste that couldn't be cultivated. Because Wen Bao was born with an earthly spirit root, the sect actually invested more in him than Zhu Qin and Wang Zhong. But after 2 years, he was the most useless one. Several of the senior brothers secretly sighed that the sect had made a mistake and let a waste in. However, in just 1 month, this waste had completed a shocking reversal. It was Wang Lu, and only Wang Lu could miraculously turn waste into treasure. Wang Zhong didn't think that Wang Lu would bring a useless waste to complete the challenge. Wen Bao must have played a great role in the process, and if he could make a useless waste play a role, wouldn't that be turning waste into treasure? Now that he thought about it, Wang Lu seemed to be good at turning waste into treasure. 2 years ago, it was also because he followed him that a mountain village errand boy could become a genius disciple of the Lingjian school. Thinking of this, Wang Zhong secretly looked back from behind the tree and saw the fat figure beside Wang Lu, who was the focus of everyone's attention. He couldn't help but feel pain in his heart. That position used to belong to him, but he gave it to someone else. Regret? If he said that he didn't regret at all, he would be deceiving himself. But even if he could choose again, he would still insist on his current choice. Maybe he would. For a moment, everyone had their own thoughts. Only a gentle woman faintly congratulated them. Congratulations to the 2 senior brothers for completing the amazing challenge. In this regard, Wang Lu just laughed. Junior sister is too polite. But Wen Bao was at a loss, and his fat cheeks suddenly turned red. Junior sister, you congratulated the wrong person. I actually didn't do anything. I'm so stupid that I didn't accomplish anything. It's all because of senior brother. Senior brother took me, seeing that this idiot was about to dance with joy under Yu Xinyao's gaze, and his limbs spasmed, Wang Lu stepped on him and promptly stopped the ugly performance. Yu Xinyao smiled with tolerance. Senior brother Wen is too modest. Not to mention other things, just the fact that you have the courage to follow senior brother Wang Lu and brave the Azure Dragon Gorge with just the 2 of you is already not easy. Xinyao asks herself honestly, I'm afraid I don't have the courage of senior brother Wen. Hearing this, Wen Bao's tears almost flowed down. Confidant, it was simply a confidant. Moreover, it was a confidant. Junior sister, what are you talking about? I was just lucky, that's all. Yu Xinyao also said, a person's opportunity is also a help that can't be ignored on the immortal path. Senior brother's deep immortal fate is very enviable. I think that when the elders accepted senior brother Wen as their disciple, it was also because of your immortal fate. Yu Xinyao still wanted to say something, but Wang Lu had already interrupted her helplessly. Junior sister, don't say any more. If you continue, not only will he cry, he will also pee. Happiness came too suddenly, you almost scared him to pee. Ah. Yu Xinyao tilted her head in confusion. Fortunately, at this time, someone promptly opened his mouth to solve the problem. Wang Lu. Senior brother, I have a question that I really don't understand. There are countless powerful monsters in the Azure Dragon Gorge, and even if they keep each other in check, they won't easily move out. However, you 2 have survived there for nearly a week. How did you do it? Wang Lu turned his head with a smile. Senior brother Mu Xiao, are you doubting the authenticity of our experiential learning? Mu Xiao shook his head. No, I'm just curious. Because your report didn't describe the process of the experiential learning, only the results were written, so I'm very curious about how you achieved this miracle. Hearing Mu Xiao's question, the other people also couldn't help but become interested. What exactly did 2 newcomers with such immature cultivation do to survive in the Azure Dragon Gorge for a week? That was a place of death for level 3 monsters. It was not easy to find a living space. It's very simple. Find a few powerful monsters and kill them, then occupy their nest. Wouldn't there be a living space? Kill a powerful monster and then occupy their nest. Mu Xiao and his companions were stunned. This was completely the answer of, why not eat minced meat? If they could kill a powerful monster at will, why would they need to be anxious to survive? He actually had the nerve to say it. Mu Xiao asked again, the so-called powerful monsters, probably refer to Little Thunder, Purple Ivy, Giant Barbarian, and so on. Wang Lu casually counted. Mu Xiao was surprised. Giant Barbarian? If I remember correctly, not long ago, the sect organized a large-scale experiential learning, and the target was a giant barbarian. Junior brother Yu Yun should have also participated in it, and his performance was outstanding. Yu Yun smiled bitterly. Yes, that time, the target was a level 3 middle-ranked giant barbarian, but its inner core was unexpectedly formed. Our group of 7 people went on the expedition, and although we broke its inner core, we still suffered a crushing defeat. The so-called outstanding performance was nothing more than helping several Misty Peak junior brothers and sisters to escape, that's all. It's really shameful to mention it. Mu Xiao sighed. At that time, I remember that Misty Peak's XX junior brother led the team. He was a level 1 chi cultivating stage, only one step away from foundation building. The rest of them were also veterans who had experienced many trials, but they still failed miserably. Although the giant barbarian is a level 3 middle rank, it has an endless stream of strange techniques, and it's very difficult for chi cultivating stage cultivators to contend against it. Then everyone turned their eyes to Wang Lu again. The whole team suffered a crushing defeat, and the 2 of you, how did they do it? Wang Lu smiled, took out an item from his bag, and showed it to everyone. It was a golden, slender, whisker-like object. Seeing this object, Yu Yun's pupils shrank, Mu Xiao retreated 2 steps, his complexion pale, and Zhu Qin opened his mouth wide, shaking his head in disbelief. For a moment, the Heavenly Policy Hall was completely silent. Only Wen Yin, who couldn't figure it out, wondered, senior brother Wang Lu, this is, the nearby Zhu Qin was shocked, junior sister Wen Yin, don't ask. Unfortunately, it was too late. Wang Lu laughed. Thank you for asking, junior sister. This is the giant barbarian's whip. Giant barbarians. Whip? What does that mean? Wen Yin tilted her head, revealing a puzzled expression. Her slightly wrinkled eyebrows and pursed pink lips looked like an innocent little white flower. Then a pair of sinful flower-picking hands fell from the sky. The so-called giant barbarian's whip is the external genitalia of the giant barbarian, which is used to carry on the family line, as well as to expel waste water from the body. If we use the same human organ as an analogy, then it is. Before he could finish his words, Wen Yin screamed, her cheeks flushed, and stepped back a few steps. Senior brother Wang Lu, you are such a rogue. How could you take out such a dirty thing? Wang Lu was also stunned. Junior sister, why do you say that? It's just a genitalia, that's all. It's not a human's genitalia, it's just a monster's. What's the difference between this and the sheep's penis and dog's treasure in the Carefree Peaks cafeteria? It can even be said that the giant barbarian's whip as a material for refining pills and magical tools is more artistic than the sheep's penis and dog's treasure. Wen Yin was ashamed and angry at the same time. That's also very dirty. I've clearly washed it clean. It's not a matter of whether it's clean or not, that thing is very dirty. It's already very dirty. That's a very serious prejudice. Wang Lu's expression became serious. Genitalia is a very broad concept. The flower on junior sister's head is the plant's genitalia. According to what you said, it's, I don't want to hear it. Wen Yin pulled the flower petals out of her hair angrily, wrinkled her cute little nose, and made a face at Wang Lu. Senior brother, you're being unreasonable. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Humph, little girl, you're not sensible. Wang Lu failed to show off, so he resentfully put away the giant barbarian's whip. Anyway, as evidence, this thing was enough. Then, they could get back to the point. Senior brother Mu Xiao, this time we came to you. In addition to submitting the registration report, there's another thing, which is to confirm the challenge points. Mu Xiao sighed in his heart. What will come, senior brother Wang Lu, how many points in total? Wang Lu laughed and said, according to the sect's calculation rules on challenge points, according to my calculation, the total should be 2,890 points. Puff. For a moment, many people had the impulse to spit out some liquid in their bodies. 2,890 points. Although they had long expected that senior brother Wang Lu's experiential learning would be exceptionally fruitful, when the final result appeared, it was still frightening to the point that they wanted to vomit blood. Wang Lu sighed. Our sex points rules encourage soldiers to take risks, to win big with small. Although it seems that there are some restrictions on the rewards for some extremely dangerous actions, but considering the bonus of those consecutive successful challenges, in the end, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. I studied hard in the Ten Cloud Hall for 2 years, but I almost couldn't catch up with this risky move. Alas, the life of an immortal cultivator is really lonely like snow. Lonely your sister. The local tycoon who gets 3,000 points in a week, please go die for me. We were just overjoyed because we got 10 points in our account. Hurry up and give us back our simple and pure happiness. While the junior brothers and sisters wanted to cry but had no tears, Yu Yun, as the guide, sighed and tried to pull back the atmosphere. Immortal cultivation is against the heavens' will. Without the spirit of survival in adversity and the spirit of taking risks, it is impossible to go far on the road of immortal cultivation. Senior brother Wang Lu has set a very good example for us. We should be like him in the future. Speaking up to here, Yu Yun was stuck. Like Wang Lu, bringing a dead fatty to the Azure Dragon Gorge to grind points? What kind of world weariness would that be? Shaking his head, Yu Yun said, in short, today our 2 experiential learning teams have successfully completed the task. It can be said to be a double blessing. Why don't we take this opportunity to have a meal together? After listening to this suggestion, Wang Lu looked at Zhu Qin, who was standing beside Yu Yun, with a complicated expression. He looked at a certain middle schooler who was still hiding behind the tree, and then looked at the pale Mu Xiao. In this situation, he wanted to gather this group of people together for a meal? Was this a rush? Yu Yun, you really have good eyesight. There was no other way. At this time, a person with a high IQ like him was needed to clean up the mess. It is not good to eat immediately after exercise. Everyone has just finished their experiential learning, so let's forget about it. After a moment of awkward silence, Yu Yun finally recovered and said, that's right, everyone is very tired, why don't we postpone the dinner? Heh, I'm the host, everyone must give me face. Certainly. The crowd quickly dispersed as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, except for the 3 of them. Wang Lu didn't leave, Wen Bao also didn't dare to walk around, and Mu Xiao, who was being watched by Wang Lu with interest, couldn't move, as if his feet were rooted to the ground. Thinking of the bed of 100 spirit stones, Mu Xiao's heart was filled with sadness. He had worked hard in the sect for 30 years, and also had all kinds of subsidies from the Heavenly Policy Hall, but his net worth was only 10 or 20,000 spirit stones. This bet, even if he sold himself, he wouldn't be able to pay it back. However, thinking of this, Mu Xiao gritted his teeth. What was there to be afraid of? At worst, he would go to the Sword Tomb for 100 years and discuss with his master about the Sword Tomb's subsidy in advance. No matter what, he would be able to pay off his debt. Wang Lu smiled and said, Senior brother Mu Xiao, it's getting late, are you interested in having a meal together? It's my treat. Humph. If we can go to the Sword Tomb, why can't we have a meal together? Senior brother is so heroic. Wang Lu nodded. It just so happens that I know an excellent restaurant nearby. Senior brother, you probably haven't been there yet. Humph, even if it's a mountain of knives or a sea of flames, I won't hesitate. You lead the way. Biyao, who was next to him, was really puzzled. Senior brother Wang Lu, why do I feel that the atmosphere is a bit strange? Is there something between you and senior brother Mu Xiao? Wang Lu earnestly said, there is nothing between us. Chapter 52. In the canteen of Ethereal Peak, Wang Lu, Biyao, and Mu Xiao took their seats in the main hall. Mu Xiao looked around at the scenery of the cafeteria, and his heart was filled with emotion. Ever since that famous chef from the Western continent came, he hadn't eaten here for a long, long time. Then he turned his head and looked at the Western continent famous dish on the table, looked up at the starry sky, and looked at the fish head standing on top of the flat cake. His heart was filled with a kind of sigh of sympathy. They were both in the same boat. Not long after, the cafeteria service puppet brought the dishes ordered by Wang Lu one by one, and 2 bottles of purple Western continent wine. After pouring the wine for each of them, it quietly retreated. Wang Lu picked up the wine glass and smilingly said, the environment is good, right? There are only 3 of us in such a big hall, and it's like a private room. You can't find this kind of treatment anywhere else. Mu Xiao sighed and thought to himself, isn't that right? Since we are a group of rare guests, the Western chef will probably come out to lick our boots. However, he was not in the mood to care about the cafeteria. If you have something to say, please get straight to the point. All right, then I won't stand on ceremony. Wang Lu put down his wine cup. About our bet earlier. If I'm not wrong, senior brother, you probably can't afford it. Hee. Mu Xiao smiled bitterly and did not speak. 2,890 points are equivalent to 239,000 spirit stones. Even the elders of the sect would find it difficult to take out such a huge sum of money at once. Moreover, senior martial brother, you're just an ordinary disciple, and you're in the middle of cultivating. However, it's alright if you can't pay me back. I don't intend to force you. Not forcing it? Upon hearing this, Mu Xiao was immediately stunned. Although it was somewhat inconceivable, could it be that the meaning of Wang Lu's words was, no, when did their non-phase peak have such a compassionate heart? According to the greedy 5th elder, he would probably give him a loan that he would never be able to repay in his entire life. It was precisely because of this that Mu Xiao had the impulse to go into closed-door cultivation in the Sword Tomb for 100 years. Wang Lu, what are you trying to do? I've offended you before, and now I admit defeat. If you want to kill me, do as you please, but don't make fun of me like this. But Wang Lu said seriously, Mu Xiao Shixiang, we Lingjian school disciples are of the same branch, no matter what, we don't need to kill each other. Have we ever had an irreconcilable enmity? It was just a disagreement back then, a dispute, nothing more. How can there be hatred? Even if Wang Lu wanted Mu Xiao to castrate himself on the spot, it would not make Mu Xiao more stunned than this. You are. How considerate are you? That doesn't sound like something you would say. Then, he heard Wang Lu continue, the dispute that day was not intentional by either of us, so there is no need for senior brother to blame yourself. Did senior brother deliberately make things difficult for me that day? Mu Xiao hurriedly shook his head. Absolutely not. But. Wang Lu laughed, it's just a matter of face. Face. Mu Xiao murmured to himself. After a moment, he suddenly picked up the wine cup, drank it, and then sighed, what a matter of face. For a moment, he didn't know how much entanglement there was in his heart. So, he suddenly poured a full cup of wine and drank it again. Alas, senior brother Wang Lu, you're right. At that time, because, in short, I have some prejudice against you. Later on, senior brother, you didn't bow and scrape to me like the other younger generation disciples. Alas, because of my face, I almost ruined your important matter. Mu Xiao said and picked up the wine cup, I hope senior brother Wang Lu is magnanimous. Senior brother Mu Shao, you're too polite, don't call me senior brother. According to the sect rules, before I master the king pill, I'm not qualified to be the senior brother of a true disciple. Alas, it's all because of face, I even forgot the sect rules. While talking, he drank another cup of wine. This Misty Peak Cafeteria's Western Continent wine was brewed with some heavenly materials and earthly treasures. After a few cups, Mu Shao was already slightly tipsy. Then, as for that bet, senior brother Wang Lu, you can rest assured that I will pay you back no matter what. Tomorrow, I will quit my job in Heavenly Policy Hall and go down the mountain to gain experience. Speaking of earning spirit stones, it's faster to go down the mountain. With my Shudan stage strength, as long as I work hard, it's not impossible to earn 200,000 spirit stones. Wang Lu advised, I've already said that you don't need to worry about the gambling debt. Alas, how can I not worry about it? Especially after listening to senior brother Wang Lu's advice, it makes me even more ashamed. If I really put the gambling debt behind me, I won't be able to eat and sleep well in the future. And if I have a mental state, there will be obstacles in my cultivation. I'm afraid I will never be able to reach a higher realm in my life. Wang Lu sighed, you're too persistent. Mu Shao said with a smile, as a cultivator, how can I not have some persistence? Maybe with this opportunity, after I go down the mountain, my cultivation will be even more refined. Within 10 years, I'll let you all see if I can master the king pill. Seeing that Mu Shao had already become impassioned under the influence of alcohol, Wang Lu nodded, it's really praiseworthy to have such lofty sentiments and lofty aspirations. But junior brother Mu Shao, you might as well think about it. If you really go down the mountain, what will Uncle Lu Xian think of me? Mu Shao froze for a moment, I will explain to him. I'm afraid that the more I explain, the worse it will get. You also know Uncle Lu Xian's temper. What's more, if the Heavenly Policy Hall loses manpower, what will happen to the daily work? Grabbing other junior brothers to replace them, I'm afraid it will be difficult to achieve senior brothers' efficiency. Mu Shao suddenly felt a chill in his head, mumbling, then what should I do? Wang Lu inwardly smiled, thinking that the key link had finally arrived. Oh, speaking of which, it's a coincidence. I have a slightly difficult matter here and need junior brother Mu's help. Mu Shao quickly said, there's no harm in saying it. Anything is fine. Wang Lu said, in fact, this matter is not difficult for junior brother, but it will help me a lot. If you are willing to help, it is no less than 200,000 spirit stones. Is there such a thing? Mu Shao was surprised. Yes, this experiential learning in the small clear sky peak may be a miracle in the eyes of others, but in fact, for me, there are still some shortcomings. Mu Shao suddenly clicked his tongue, there are still shortcomings? This is simply not letting people live. Wang Lu said, but in fact, in the process of experiential learning, when Bao and I have reached our limits, and there is no room for further improvement in our tactics. After thinking about it, the current lineup is a bit weak, and if we want to make up for the shortcomings, we need to introduce new people. Mu Shao nodded to show his understanding, but what does this have to do with me? Does he need me to help recommend people? It's like this, I hope to introduce foreign aid. His identity is a bit special. Mu Shao froze for a moment, then frowned, could it be someone from the evil path? Oh, where can I get to know someone from the evil path? Don't worry, there is no problem with his background. On this point, I can issue a guarantee in the name of the fifth elder, so you won't be embarrassed. The special thing about the foreign aid I want is that the other party is not a cultivator, but a mortal world's martial artist. Mortal world's martial artist. Mu Shao was taken aback, isn't that the same as courting death? Wang Lu pointed to himself, don't forget, I am actually just a mortal world's martial artist. I can guarantee that person is absolutely strong, even if I die, that person will not die. This is the key to me completing the challenge. Mu Shao hesitated, but according to the rules. Wang Lu said, yes, according to the rules, except for a successor disciple like me, the clear sky peak does not allow mortals to enter, but generally speaking, if there is a special guarantee from the sex elder, then it is a different matter. Now, I can casually issue a guarantee from the fifth elder. The key is whether junior brother Mu Shao will recognize it or not. Mu Shao nodded in silence, understanding the crux of the problem. If it was just a stingy rule, Wang Lu could issue a guarantee in the name of the elder, and it would be a special case to bring in foreign aid. But as the saying goes, rules are dead, and people are alive. In order to avoid practical difficulties, a clerk like Mu Shao was needed to adapt to the situation. But now there were two problems. First, was it legal for Wang Lu to falsely use the elder's seal? Second, even if it was really issued by the fifth elder, given her special character, it was another matter whether the guarantee would be effective or not. So the final decision to allow Wang Lu to bring in foreign aid was indeed made by Mu Shao. But this was indeed a bit difficult. According to Mu Zhao's character, this kind of application with too much uncertainty and too high risk would generally be rejected, but the applicant was, after all, senior brother Wang Lu. But if he agreed to it, it would be a great violation of the relevant rules. Just when Mu Shao was hesitating, Wang Lu said again, "If junior brother Mu Shao feels that this matter is not reliable enough, I can think of another way." At this point, Mu Shao could only clench his teeth and said, "Even if this matter is not reliable, but senior brother Wang Lu, you are absolutely reliable, I trust you. So, I will write a permission letter for you, leaving the name blank. Senior brother, you can fill it however you want. I have a seal with me, I will stamp it for you." While saying that, Mu Shao took out the seal that symbolized the authority of the Heavenly Policy Hall from his mustard seed bag and stamped a red seal on the lower right corner of the golden sincerity paper. It's done, then senior brother, you can fill it as you please. But because it is a sincerity paper, you must write your real name. After filling it, your companion will be able to pass through the small clear sky peaks restriction. Hearing this, Wang Lu frowned, but immediately stretched out his eyebrows. He picked up his wine cup and said with a smile, "Junior brother Mu Shao is really straightforward. Senior brother, I will drink first." "Good. Drink." Although he had casually done something that completely violated the operating rules, Mu Shao felt as if he had been worn out. He put down the wine cup, picked up the wine pot, and drank to his heart's content, which shocked the nearby Wang Lu and Wen Bao. However, this Shudan stage cultivator, who had been engaged in public service for 3 years, had already cultivated a huge amount of spirit grass. Under the effect of the spirit grass brewed wine, he began to feel dizzy and tipsy, but his mood was even more carefree. This is really refreshing." Wang Lu also laughed. "It is indeed refreshing. But let's not just drink without eating. Let's eat, let's eat. This is the traditional cuisine of the Western continent, we must taste it." Mu Shao muddle-headedly picked up his chopsticks, picked up a piece of the starry sky pancake that was filled with the curse and resentment of the fish-head star people, and subconsciously put it into his mouth. Then he fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Chapter 53. After using the Misty Peak cafeteria's traditional weapon to deal with Mu Shao, Wang Lu called the cafeteria's service puppet to send him back to his residence. Holding the golden document in his hand, Wang Lu laughed and shook his head. He really believed it. Sure enough, public officials are especially easy to talk to on the table. Wen Bao, who had been silent for a long time, finally couldn't hold back his curiosity. "Senior brother, what were you and senior brother Mu Shao doing? It seemed like you had a bet with him." Therefore, Wang Lu explained the bet that they made before this trip to the small clear sky peak. Wen Bao was immediately surprised. "Senior brother, according to what you said, it's a bet of at least 200,000 spirit stones. You just give up like that? Just for this piece of paper?" Wang Lu said, "Do you really think that 200,000 spirit stones can be obtained?" Even if Mu Xiao sells himself, he can't afford it. Moreover, we are fellow disciples, but because of a quarrel, one of them had to go into seclusion in the sword tomb. This kind of thing is enough to alarm the heavenly sword hall. At that time, it will not be easy to clean up. So instead of staring at the 200,000 spirit stones that can't be obtained, it would be better to get something practical. Wen Bao stared at the golden document in Wang Lu's hand. Was this the thing that senior brother was talking about? In fact, the real harvest is not just this piece of paper. You know, according to the rules, signing this thing to me is against the rules. For a public official who has been working hard for more than 3 years, this is a big risk. If it weren't for the table, even if he owes me 200,000 spirit stones, I'm afraid he wouldn't be so happy to trample on the rules. Wen Bao didn't really understand. And then? For public officials, breaking the rules is like taking drugs. Once there is the first time, the second and third time will follow, and it is impossible to return to the original life. What is that saying? That door has been broken, and happiness will never come back. Seeing that Wen Bao's ability to understand was like a domestic animal's, Wang Lu decided to directly draw a conclusion. In short, it is very convenient to use the power of Mu Xiao, a public official, to seek personal gain. Wen Bao suddenly realized, I knew it, senior martial brother spent so much effort, it can't really be for the sake of friendship, he must have a purpose. Of course, he wouldn't dare to say this even if he had 10,000 guts. Also, senior brother, what did you mean when you said that you had regrets about that training? It's literally what it means. Although I fought all the monsters that I should have fought, I was limited by my lack of strength at that time, so I didn't collect many medicinal herbs and didn't achieve many achievements. In the end, I only survived in the Azure Dragon Gorge for 7 days before I had no choice but to retreat. I didn't achieve the goal of 10 days. Don't you feel indignant? Don't you think we should do something next? Of course, Wen Bao didn't think so. He didn't know how to spend the 3,000 challenge points he had, and he didn't even have time to digest junior sister Yu's sincere praise. How could he think about what was going to happen next? Oh, in any case, I am still brooding over those red refined fruits, so after resting for 2 days, I still have to go to the small clear sky peak. Wen Bao was stunned. He blinked his eyes and waited for senior brother Wang Lu to continue. Of course, you too. Sure enough, I can't run away. Wen Bao lamented and put his plump chin on the table. Although the experiential learning challenge was over, thinking about the extreme week he spent in the small clear sky peak, as well as the countless crises he encountered during that time, he still felt his hair stand on end and his legs go soft. However, just now in the Heavenly Policy Hall, junior sister Yu's gentle smile appeared in his mind at this moment. That sweet voice, that gentle and beautiful appearance immediately injected boundless courage into Fatty. Although his left and right legs were weak, the right side of his left leg and the left side of his right leg gradually became firm. Good, let's go. But, senior brother, what's the matter with the foreign aid you mentioned? Do we really need to find someone to help us? What kind of person is it? Of course it's a super strong master, otherwise, there would be no need to go through so much trouble. Wen Bao smiled and began to try to flatter his senior brother, in front of senior brother, who dares to call themselves a master? Isn't it just a mortal world's martial artist? Wang Lu sneered, it's true that he's a mortal world's martial artist, but to be honest, I'm not even qualified to be his punching bag. Do you understand? Wen Bao, of course, couldn't understand. Senior brother Wang Lu, you actually used a self-deprecating method to flatter others? This is completely not in line with your character. However, the master Wang Lu mentioned really aroused his interest. For Wang Lu to be so eager, how high was that person? Oh, come with me to visit him, then you'll know. With that, Wang Lu stood up. Wen Bao was surprised, now? Of course now. While it's not too late, I still want to find a place to eat something. You don't think I'll really eat these so-called Western delicacies, do you? Wen Bao nodded in agreement. With his size, it was natural for him to not be picky about food. However, even Wen Bao had no interest in the Misty Peaks cafeteria. Then, the two of them boldly got up and walked away. When they left the cafeteria, they seemed to hear the heartbroken sigh of a chef at the kitchen door. Wen Bao couldn't help but say, actually, that chef has been working very hard. Even if there are no customers, she has been constantly updating her dishes for the past 2 years. Yes, unfortunately, the route is wrong. The more knowledge you have, the more reactionary you become. That fellow has no cooking talent. I heard that she is second to none in the Western continent, but eating and cooking are two completely different things, okay? I don't know which donkey kicked Marshal Uncle Lu Xian's head that he hired her as a chef. Wen Bao thought for a moment and said, I remember half a year ago, she updated a dish. She said that she integrated her life experience in the Western continent into the food. It was a culinary delicacy that contained profound truth, which could make the taster enjoy an extraordinary experience. Wang Lu, as a long-term food ticket holder of the Misty Peaks cafeteria, naturally understood. He angrily nodded and said, the result was clearly an enhanced version of the look up at the starry sky. 13 fish heads were neatly stacked on the edge of a round pancake, and then she explained that this symbolized everyone's equality, regardless of their status. Damn it. At that moment, she was practically possessed by my master. There was no limit to her trickery. Wen Bao was stunned. I think she was serious at that time. That, to describe it in a literary way, her pair of green eyes were full of sadness. Wang Lu glanced at Wen Bao. Fatty, you should give up. Even if you read all the women's magazines in the sect, you can't become a literary superman to win the favor of junior sister Yu. Thereupon, Wen Bao's dark brown eyes were full of sadness. I just want to shorten the distance between me and her. Then you have to lose your belly first. By the way, senior brother, you said you want to find something to eat, but we're not going to the Carefree Peak. Wang Lu laughed. What's so delicious about the Carefree Peak? Just follow me. Then, Wen Bao followed Wang Lu down the Spirit Sword Mountain in a daze. Walking on the quiet path of the Spirit Creek town, Wen Bao became more and more alarmed. Senior brother, where are we going? Ha ha ha, we're already here, why are you still asking? In the Spirit Creek town, only the Ru Family Inn is reliable, right? Ru Family Inn. Wen Bao almost jumped up. That's the Ru Family Inn where the lady boss would kick the customers out of the door and roll them down the slope, sell a white radish for 1,000 taels of silver, and force them to promote new air hong. Wang Lu gave Wen Bao a deep look. Yes, that's the lady boss who would kick the customers out of the inn. Moreover, with her six senses magical ability, even if you were standing here, she could hear you clearly and remember you for the rest of her life. Wen Bao's legs went soft on the spot. I beg you not to go. Interesting, you can go to the Azure Dragon Gorge, but you can't go to the Ru Family Inn? Wen Bao painfully explained, Senior brother, please forgive me. I'd rather face those monsters in the Azure Dragon Gorge than face the lady boss of the Ru Family Inn. Whenever I think of her, my legs go soft. Even when I think of junior sister Yu's smile, I can't get hard. Oh, you're so young yet you can't get hard. Are you going to be a pushover for the rest of your life? Wang Lu ridiculed him, but in his heart, he was also surprised. This fatty's intuition was really sharp. In terms of strength, the lady boss, who could break a magical weapon with one hand and beat the fifth elder like a sandbag, was indeed much stronger than those third-level monsters in the small clear sky peak, although she was only a mortal martial artist. Even if it was Wang Lu himself, he would not be willing to face the hostility of the lady boss. However, this time, she is an ally, so you don't have to worry about anything. Ally. Senior brother, the reinforcement you were talking about is her. Dang dang dang. Under Wen Bao's urgent gaze, Wang Lu unscrupulously knocked on the door of the Ru Family Inn. Because of the poor business, this inn, which had no sincerity in operating it, closed early all year round. At this time, the door was closed and obviously did not receive guests. However, Wang Lu obviously did not intend to pay attention to this closed door. Shortly after the knock on the door, a sleepy and lazy voice came from inside the door. Closed, no more business. Wang Lu smiled. It just so happens that I don't intend to pay, haha, lady boss, quickly come out to receive the guest. Then he openly pushed the door open and entered. This unscrupulous face made Wen Bao even more nervous. Receive your sister. With a mocking voice, the lady boss staggered out of the guest room on the second floor. From her wrinkled clothes and sleepy eyes, it was not difficult to determine that Wang Lu had just interrupted her sleep. However, when the lady boss saw Wang Lu, she couldn't help but smile. Adultery. Wen Bao's first judgment was made, and then he admired Wang Lu from the bottom of his heart. Lingjian's school did not prohibit, and even encouraged, the exchange of feelings between disciples. Misty Peak, Carefree Peak, and other places also had many Dao companions, but, to fall in love with this fierce beast in human form, senior brother Wang Lu, you are really too manly. While Wen Bao was letting his imagination run wild, the lady boss also saw him. From the perspective of his physique, there was no way she couldn't see him. Then the lady boss smiled evilly. Oh, Wang Lu, you can come if you want, but you also brought a beast. Are you here for a sumptuous meal? Wen Bao immediately knelt down. This Ru family inn was indeed a scam. The lady boss clearly wanted to make human meat buns, and the filling was fat. Wang Lu smiled. Indeed, I am here for a sumptuous meal. Lady boss, please serve 4 dried fruits, 4 fresh fruits, 2 salted and sour fruits, and 4 candied fruits. The lady boss yawned. There are apples on the counter, peel them and eat them yourself. Wang Lu was silent for a while. Then, do you have roasted quail, stir-fried duck feet, chicken tongue soup, deer tripe brewed with ginger, beef tendons, chrysanthemum rabbit shreds, stir-fried deer legs, ginger and vinegar gold and silver trotters? The lady boss looked deeply at Wang Lu, and then pointed to the dining table at the side. You guys sit down and wait, I'll go cook. A moment later, the lady boss came out with 3 bowls of clear noodles. Sir, your dishes have all been served. Wang Lu looked at the clear noodles. Lady boss, your dishes have shrunk to the point of becoming an evil god. Show me some sincerity. It's rare for me to bring a guest here. But the lady boss said inhumanely, it's already sincerity enough that I didn't serve you the fodder. What else do you want? If you want to eat, eat. If not, get lost. Since there was no other way, he would just eat. Before the others could say anything, Wen Bao had already picked up his chopsticks. Wen Bao was also very hungry. Although he couldn't eat those famous dishes that Wang Lu had just ordered, a bowl of clear noodles was also good. It was better than looking up at the starry sky. Thinking of this, he took a sip of the noodle soup. The next moment, Wen Bao's expression became very strange. Because the taste of the noodles was far beyond his imagination. Wen Bao had thought that it was at most a farmer's craft, but when the noodle soup entered his mouth, the refreshing and delicious taste made him feel as if he had returned to the good times of a few years ago. This lady boss has hidden her skills well. Senior brother Wang Lu really brought him to a good place. Although he had tasted all kinds of luxurious dishes in the canteen of the Carefree Peak in the past 2 years, the dishes that reflected the chef's skills were usually the noodle soup, sliced pork, and other simple dishes. Just this bowl of noodles alone made Wen Bao sure at the lady boss was definitely a top-notch chef. Not long after, the 3 bowls were clean. The lady boss wiped the table and asked, looking for me in the middle of the night, what's the matter? Wang Lu also went straight to the point, I want to go to the small clear sky peak to pick some herbs, but now I lack a hired thug. Lady boss, I see that you are a good bodyguard material, so I want to use you as a labor force. Then the lady boss very enthusiastically responded to Wang Lu's invitation, I don't have the time, I'm busy. Oh, busy closing the shop. In any case, no one will come to your inn. Damn, you can't talk nonsense like that. Wang Lu directly poked the lady boss's sore spot, so she slapped the table and stood up. What do you mean no one will come? In the past 2 years, my inn's daily turnover has exceeded 10,000 silver taels. What else do you want? Wen Bao was surprised, so much. Wang Lu was also surprised. You're actually talking about the average, you're really shameless. 2 years ago, in the Immortal Gathering, I helped you earn more than 10 million silver taels, which is indeed 10,000. But you still have the nerve to say that. 2 days ago, Elder Lu Li also announced that the average savings of the sect's disciples is 70,000 spirit stones. I don't know how many disciples scolded you. The lady boss choked and couldn't spit out even half a word. Wang Lu continued to earnestly persuade her, in any case, you're just wasting your life here. Why don't you come with me to the mountain to cultivate your moral character? The lady boss laughed. You, a vulgar person, are also qualified to talk about moral character? Hey, please show some respect to the Spirit Sword sect's top student. Let's not talk about the 6 A's in the cultural course. Even before we entered the mountain, we were already famous students, proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and have always been full of moral character. The lady boss continued to laugh. It's just that moral character is more urgent, right? Seeing that the lady boss was stubborn, and that after 2 years of bickering with him, her level had already rapidly risen to a level close to his, Wang Lu decided to use his killer move, no longer talking nonsense with the lady boss, and decide the outcome in 1 round. Wang Lu kowtowed. Master, please help your disciple. Puff. The lady boss spurted out on the spot, and at the same time, Wen Bao, who was watching from the side, also felt his heart stop beating for a moment. Senior brother Wang Lu, isn't your image collapsing too fast? Wang Lu looked up with a serious face. This is the so-called a day as a teacher, a lifetime as a slave. Oh, wrong, a day as a teacher means 100 days of kindness. Master, you can't just leave your disciple like this. The lady boss put on a frightened expression. Hey, don't scare me. Letting you kowtow like this, it feels like, in your words, it feels like raising a strange flag. After hesitating for a moment, seeing that Wang Lu was about to kowtow again, the lady boss finally couldn't help but give in. Okay, since you're so sincere in begging me, then I'll reluctantly help you, but please don't kowtow to me again. Wang Lu was overjoyed, and he fiercely inserted his chopsticks on the table. Master, accept this kowtow from your disciple. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.